Good evening. This is welcome to the June 21st meeting of the Town of Cohasset Select Board. Tonight's meeting will be conducted on its Zoom platform and live streamed on 143 TV and Cohasset's Facebook page. The public is invited to participate on the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link provided at the top of the posted agenda for tonight's meetings. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called upon by the chair. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant. All votes taken in this meeting will be by roll call. Members of the public who wish to ask questions are asked to raise their virtual hand on Zoom, and at the discretion of the chair will be promoted into the meeting. Members must provide their full name and address for the public record. Please note that comments and platforms other than Zoom will not be monitored. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on Cohasset 143 TV. Okay, everybody present will indicate by saying aye. Start with Jean.
Jean Haley Dippold, aye. Here.
Corey.
Corey Evans here.
Paul Grady.
Paul Grady present.
Diane Kennedy.
Diane Kennedy here.
And Jack Creighton here. Okay, we're going to go into executive session for exemption number 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. I so declare. The board will receive an update on the bound book matter. For those who are watching this as a public meeting, we are going to adjourn this Zoom session, and then this select board will go into the executive session on a separate Zoom platform. Then at 7 o'clock, we will come back into session. So if you're on here now, you can wait, or you can go out and come back at 7. So I'm now going to adjourn this meeting, and I guess we should all say we agree to adjourn. Please signify by saying aye, Jean.
Aye, Jean Haley Dippold.
Corey Evans.
Point of order. I think what you're looking for is a motion to enter executive session.
Okay, fine. Yeah. You want to make the motion, Corey?
Yeah, I move that we enter executive session.
I'll second it.
Okay. Made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye, starting with Jean.
Jean Haley Dippold, aye.
Corey Evans, aye. It's all right.
Sorry about that.
Let's go for it. Diane.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Grady.
Paul Grady, aye.
Okay, the chair adjourns this meeting, and we'll see you at the executive session.
Is this meeting the one that started at 6:30 or the second one that started at 7?
It should be the original.
Okay.
The original meeting that we've gone back into.
Okay.
I see Chris there. I see Diane. I see Tracy. Tracy, are you hearing us? Chris, are we in
Yep,
the main
I'm here.
meeting? Oh, so we're in the main meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
Who's
So I just reconvene.
Yep. That's Michelle, Chris, executive
Oh.
session. We just put a sign up.
Oh, all right.
I'll change it.
We live?
Yes, Jack.
Yes, we are.
We're on TV and Facebook and Zoom.
We're on TV and Facebook. For those people who were here earlier, welcome back to the Tuesday, January 21st, 2022 Select Board meeting. We convened at 6:30. We went into executive session and now we are back. But even though we've already checked in, and I just want to do a roll call again, starting with Jean,
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Corey.
Craven's still here.
Yeah. Paul Grady,
Paul Grady present.
Diane Kennedy.
Diane Kennedy here.
Okay. For those people, we have a standard call, which was done at 6:30, but I know a lot of people did not hear it. So I thought it might be helpful to clarify it and do it again. Tonight's meeting will be conducted on the Zoom platform and live streamed on Cohasset 143 TV and Cohasset's Facebook page. The public is invited to participate on the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link provided at the top of the posted agenda for tonight's meeting. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called on by the chair. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant. All votes taken at this meeting will be by roll call. Members of the public who wish to ask questions are asked to raise their virtual hands on Zoom, and at the discretion of the chair will be promoted into the meeting. Members must provide their full name and address for the public record. Please note that comments on platforms other than Zoom will not be monitored. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on Cohasset 143 TV. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome back. We start every meeting with public comment, and that's any member of the public can speak on any meeting related, on any subject relating to the town. Please be advised that if you bring up an issue, there will be no discussion. The only thing the board may do is at the end of the meeting, they may decide to take up the issue at a later board, but there will be no discussion on that. Tracy, do we have anybody waiting for the public comment period?
I don't see anybody's hands raised, Jack.
Okay.
We might
Fine.
want the Pledge of Allegiance, Jack.
Yep, I was just getting to that. Now we start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Over my shoulder, there's a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, our first thing on the agenda is a discussion of select board meetings broadcast and recording. We had our goals meeting was originally meant to be posted live. That did not happen. And then it was supposed to be recorded and played again following the next day. And I had worked this out with Chris beforehand. Shortly before the meeting, this is a select board's meeting, I was informed that for technical reasons, it could not be broadcast live. It would be rebroadcast, and for a variety of reasons, and I've been over all these at length with Chris, and I repeatedly as chair requested that it go on 143, and for whatever reason, 143 did not get it up, and when it was finally posted a while later, it was posted as a regular part of their schedule. Why, I do not know. Subsequently, we went into requests were made to have it as a link, and it finally made it on the front page. Seeing as how one of the priorities of this select board that was decided upon that meeting was communication, and there were some emails by select board members back and forth, which might have raised questions of open meeting law, issues with deliberation. But in any event, I have spoken to Chris. I've been assured that it will not happen again. But out of courtesy to the select board members who send emails back and forth around, I thought I would put it on the agenda. Does anybody wish to discuss this matter? Corey?
I appreciate the information and the work you've done to get this going. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Grady, do you have any comments or?
Sorry. So you've been assured it's not going to happen again. To me, that was a pretty important meeting, and call me a conspiracy theorist. I just don't know why it dragged on too long. I never got an answer to as to why, and I'm interested as to why. We seem to be able to get any other meeting. I get hit with school board meetings and all that stuff and everything just on my phone alone. I don't understand why a meeting that a reconfigured board of setting his agenda took what? It was a week and a half, almost 2 weeks to get up. And that's where I'm curious. And I wrote the initial email, and I did copy the board as a courtesy. So it was no violation intended, but it was directed towards the town manager. But I still haven't received an answer as to why and what technical glitches caused that meeting of all meetings not to go up. I'm just interested in that.
Okay. I could partially address that, but I think if any other members of the board would like to speak to that, this would be a good time to do that. I've spent a lot of time talking to Chris about that and been assured that these things will not be allowed to happen again. And also that he became very much aware that the importance this board places on communications. And I do think that we're a new board coming in, getting things working properly. It is not productive for what we wish to do in the future to rehash this, except that everybody recognizes it's a very serious issue. Communications is serious, and I've been assured that steps will be taken for this not to happen again. So I think we're making some progress on that. But, Paul, I think it's, you brought up a good issue, and go ahead.
And if it does?
If it does, we will have it on the agenda at the very next meeting. Does anybody have any other comments on this issue? Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I think as this board moves forward, we're showing an ability to work together, which we need to work together to move this town forward. It's a wonderful town. And let's all remember that we all took the same oath and we're all working for the same goal. And one of the things, and I urge anybody in the audience to go to the website and click on that, and you will see a board that's engaged, working together, sharing things, and coming up with a pretty good meeting. So that's why I think Paul is very concerned that everybody did not see it. But if you can now, you just go, it's right on the front page, cohassetmass.org. You go up there, it's right there. I encourage you to do it after you finish watching this meeting, of course. Okay, moving on. Could we have an update on the town website? Chris?
Thank you, Jack. So just a quick intro here. So the updating to the website has been a priority item. It's something that is top of the list for all of us, and Justin in particular. the committee is actually meeting this week. It's Thursday, I believe, and Justin's going to talk about that in a little bit and give a little more of an update. Justin just came back from a very well-deserved vacation. So he was back today for the first time. The goal is to have a nice, really robust update for everybody at the next board meeting. It just wasn't physically possible over the last 2 weeks with people not being physically present. That said, I know Justin has a very quick update on a couple of very key things that have happened, which I think the board will be happy to hear.
Do I see any hands raised? Oh, I'm sorry, Justin, speak.
Good evening. Good to see everybody. I just got back from Italy. I've gained 10 pounds, but it's nothing I can't work off over the next several weeks. So it's good to see everyone. I'm going to share my screen real quick. I promise I'll make it. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing. That's okay. I will not share my screen, but I will talk for a minute or two. For those who are watching who aren't on the select board, I want to introduce myself again. My name is Justin. I'm the communications and community engagement specialist here for the town of Cohasset. And I just want to start mentioning a couple of really good things over the last week or so. If you haven't yet noticed, the town's Facebook page, along with the Cohasset Police Department's Facebook page, are now both verified. They both now have the.
You can share your screen, Justin.
Oh, wonderful. They both now have the blue check mark, and I will share it really quickly here. Let's share. All right, I'll pop up here. As you can see in front of your screens, we've got the blue check mark here on the Police Department Facebook page, and then we have the blue check mark on the Town of Cohasset Facebook page. It gives us increased credibility and it establishes authenticity. It shows people that we are the go-to for official town news and updates, and it helps us gain more followers and increase engagement. Moving on to the website, as you may or may not know, including for the citizens, the website is in the process of being refreshed, redesigned. The design committee has been meeting and working diligently to provide citizens of the town with an updated and a more comprehensive website that is easy to use and navigate. We're working on also integrating a type of CRM platform to address resident inquiries. And on Thursday, we have a website redesign meeting with Civic Plus, they're the web development business that really handles our site. We'll be meeting with them to establish and set solid deadlines, and we'll provide a much more detailed and comprehensive presentation during the next select board meeting, which is on July 12th. Finally, I want to mention something that just hit the airwaves recently. We also have a brand new news blog that is now officially online. That has been a work in progress along with town manager Chris Senior. That website is CohassetMAnews.com. Once again, that is CohassetMAnews.com. Move over to it real quick. It is very interactive. It's a great little blog here. You can scroll down. You can click on different articles. You can also view different videos as well. So it is a wonderful spot for folks to get news and information. And they can also sign up here in the upper right-hand corner to receive news when it is posted. As you can see on the front, we've got Cohasset Pride Project celebrates LGBTQIA+ Pride Month this June. And we have some other wonderful videos, a great boating safety video. If you haven't yet seen it, that was with Scituate Police and Cohasset Police as well. So with that, I yield my time and hand it on back to the chair.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. A couple of things. Number one, we just had a discussion. Could you make sure that on the news blog, just for probably through the end of this week, so they can see that meeting? I thought it was a very positive meeting. This board worked together very, very well. The other thing is, those of us who are kind of in the know about CRM may know it, but I think people at home need a brief explanation of CRM and how that concept used in private industry can adapt to the needs of the town.
Correct. Well, for us, that will allow us to really target.
What is it?
Yep. So for us, CRM platform is a platform that we can use to integrate our website to help folks if they have questions about, let's just say, streetlights or anything else. And it's a great way for us to interact with the residents to also get emails out to them as well. So it's a platform that really helps us here at Town Hall get the information out to you, you being the citizens.
Okay, go ahead. Paul, you had your hand raised, and then Corey, and then Diane. Am I in the correct order?
Yeah, Diane was ahead of me, Jack.
All right, Diane. Oops, you're muted, Diane.
Sorry, I gotta like sit on my hands when I go to my mouse. I think the CohassetMAnews.com looks really terrific. I noticed at the top, it's in the headline, it said Town of Cohasset, and I imagine that would toggle people back to the home page. And if I could just put in a plug to basically jumping on what Jack just said, you know, I think links to important meetings and a quick ability to get to the calendar where people can download agendas for upcoming meetings is really the most important piece of the kind of flash when people go to our website that they're looking for. I mean, there are obviously people are going to go on there and read bylaws and that kind of thing, but I think it's the meetings, the meeting links, and those agendas and what is the upcoming meetings that's important. And then just because I think Jack was trying to go there, that customer, it's the CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management Software.
Right.
That's correct. Yep.
So, thank you.
Corey?
So I got to find that unmute button. So and Justin, thank you for the update and kind of getting, it's really nice to have somebody spearheading and, you know, where their brain is on all the things. So one thing which I brought up way before your time, year and a half ago, and I am still concerned about this, is just the decentralizing of information. I agree with Diane, the Cohasset News blog is great, but I didn't even know about that, and I'm pretty plugged into the town. So, and I think as residents go, I think they're going to cohassetma.org for their stuff. They're not going to another portal. And so I think long-term, I would recommend just trying to bring these two together somehow. And if we have to have two platforms, it's okay, but they need to really integrate that way they're seamless. Because I do think, and even if you look now, there's different information. So you're kind of bouncing back and forth. You know, what about the RTF? What about the dump stickers? What about the next senior center event? And it's going to get hard for people to keep track. So I'm sure that's already on your list. Just want to reinforce that. And then CRM is part of our goal. So I think we can talk about that later. But thanks, guys.
Jane? Oh, Jane and then Paul.
Yeah, I completely agree with Corey. I mean, people get frustrated enough with our current website, never mind frustrated with two. And so I think that one question I have is timelines. I realize you're meeting with our website designers on Thursday, but one of the things that we are going to do probably in T-5 minutes is create a deadline for the website. So what, in your opinion, do you think is a reasonable deadline given, and I know you're new to town, you still have to talk with the consultant, but you know, this is something that we talked about in early June, having a firm deadline for, because as Corey mentioned, this is now year 2 of a very long website design, review, process, update.
So I would probably defer to our meeting on Thursday. I know that you all want to make a deadline tonight. I'd love to have it up in the next few months, 2 to 3 months. I'd love to have it ready to rock and roll. And I think that.
Mr. Chair, would you mind? Since Justin is new, I've been on a lot of these meetings for the last year. I can provide a little bit of background if that's helpful. I've observed them. I'm not really part of the process, but as I understand it, I mean, the vendor that we're working with, Civic Plus, we're kind of on their timeline. And I've brought up in those meetings, like, well, what about this and what about that? And they're the ones that we contract for the software. They're the ones that actually implement the design changes. And I don't want to say that we're completely, at their mercy, but their timeline they've always been the ones that dictate the timeline. So I think from this perspective, what would make sense is to go to Civic Plus and get a response from them about what the timeline would be. Because I don't know how many of those conversations Justin's have been in since he's gotten here, but really Civic Plus has to this point been the scheduler, and if we want to take that control back, we should take it from them for sure.
And they will be present on Thursday as well, not physically, but I believe virtually.
Paul Grady.
I'm going to kind of piggyback on Corey and Diane's. The deadlines, there should be some answers to that in the short order. And I'm kind of curious. I mean, I've seen a couple of your good videos out in the boats, in and around the police station, on the common. I think that's all fantastic, but I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. You got the police page up, but as Gene and Corey said, it's 2 different pages. Wouldn't that all be encapsulated under one easy to use web page? Forgive me if I sound ignorant on web page design, because I am. I pay for it to have it done. But I would think that everything should be accessible under one easy to use web page instead of spreading your talents, across the bread like peanut butter. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. You seem like you're doing a nice job. But again, I think that things are going in 8 different directions when we should start with the main page. That's what I thought, is get that page up.
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to Chris on that one. I saw
Chris. Yeah, Chris.
Paul, I understand your comment, your question on that. Every branch of government entered the digital age at a different time. Police and fire tended to go first. They were first people on social media and all of that, simply because they were pushing out really cutting edge up to the moment information. This road is closed. There's a fire. Look out for the storm. What we've spent the last few years doing is coming to a place where we're much more integrated. We're not all the way there yet. And some of that integration is going to be you click and you end up on a different webpage. Like the schools have their own separate world, right? They're part of the town, but they have their own separate world. And we want to make sure it's an easy link. At the same time, it's not necessarily under one webpage, but your point is very well taken about the ease of movement. You shouldn't even realize, oh, it's the library, you click. You may not be on the town's website anymore, you may be on the library's website anymore, but you can jump right back. And some of this is that, the library, for example, is integrated into the old Colony Library Network. It's a whole South Shore-based network, and they have one big web provider for all of them, so the libraries can interconnect, right? So, again, your point is well taken. We want this to be easy to use, and we're doing a lot of different product lines, I guess, if I can put it that way. And again, any input you have, Paul, we'd love to have. I mean, anything that will make it work better. If you have any suggestions or ideas, we'd love to hear it, and we really want to make this work.
Well, I'm offering those, Chris. I'm offering those. I would think that you start at the beginning. I understand there's different pages that will click, but that main page should be able to take you to the page and back. I think the police page is great. I think the feel good videos are great. I think meeting the chief is great. But I also think that we concentrate on the main page, and then you get, you add those links onto those pages like any other, web page that a company web page will steer you in another direction. But I think the main page is the most important page, is updating it. And then I think that is easy to use. And I do understand going to the link, but back forward and hitting back and going back to the main page. I want to look at Jean Healy's page and ask her a question. I just got off the police page. I click back and I tap on her. Do you see what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. I think it's doing some very nice work, but I think it seems to me rather scattered. I try to see about pulling it together and collating it and putting under the main, a new, well-designed, easy-to-use web page.
Speaking of Jean had her hand up. I don't know if it was an old raised hand or not.
No, my only thought was with Civic Plus, at the end of the day, if they're not going to get us the services we need on the timeline we need, then we might need to find a new vendor. And this is not directed at you, Justin or Chris. This is directed at Civic Plus.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Jan. It's a well-taken point. So that's one of the things on Thursday. It's going to be like, look, we've been talking about this for a while. We know it's the pandemic. We understand all that. That said, our board is saying, hey, we got to get this done. We got to get this done. So please, we got to move on this. So that is the primary message. And just to double back, Paul, so the webpage is one of our communications vehicles, but it's not the only one. People don't just live on the webpage. They live on email. Some of them live on social media. And again, we definitely want things to be integrated. At the same time, we have to do more. We have to do as many things as possible at the same time. And right now, it's Civic Plus that's really holding us back, quite frankly, on the webpage. So the work that Justin's doing on other things, I think, is really, he's moved us light years on social media. I mean, our pages are vibrant, they're engaged, people are watching. It's driving more people to events. And the next thing it's going to start doing, I think, is driving people to important issues that this board designates, whether it's zoning or capital infrastructure, all those things you'll be talking about in a little while. I think all of that great groundwork is going to help this board engage with the community. So thank you.
So I think it's fair to say, and I might, if any, from the board's perspective, we want a deadline, and we want on our meeting on Thursday, we want some very specific discussions about deadlines. Is that kind of the consensus of the board, or do we want to discuss it further? Okay, I don't think we need a vote on that. I don't see any further discussion. So I'm looking around. So I guess we're all set. So Justin, deadline Thursday. Have a nice couple of days.
Wonderful. Thank you. And once again, I appreciate the board's time. Thank you.
Okay, Diane, did you just raise your hand?
That was a goodbye to Justin. That was a
All
wave.
right. Well, you can speak, by the way.
I'll use my virtual hand.
We talked a lot about select board goals, and I think that anybody who sees the meeting that this select board had, which had an example of a select board working together and deciding on goals. So we went over in our last meeting, we went over them, but we did not officially vote if those are our goals. Do we wish to discuss them, or are people prepared to vote on that? And there's a thing about the goals in the packet. Does anybody want to see it? Diane, I saw your hand this time.
No, I was just going to suggest, Jack, maybe that we read them out loud. There's 3 bullets so that the public can hear, and I'd be happy to make a motion at that point.
All right. Let me pull it up, or if Diane, do you have it in front of it? You could read that. I have stacks of paper right here, and I want to read it exactly as it was sent.
I'm on my work computer, so I'm not logged into OneDrive, but let me see if I can get it up quicker. Maybe somebody else has it.
I've got it right here if you want to hear it.
Well, Paul, go for it.
Goal 1, we all set? Goal number 1, communication. To continue communication and engagement efforts, including the following: an updated, more functional and comprehensive website that also has a customer relationship management, CRM system to address resident inquiries. Specific communications campaigns for the select board priorities. Goal 2, continue work on zoning reform, provide legal, technical, and communication resources to bring forth proposed bylaws for the next 2023 annual town meeting. Goal 3, secure funding for certain infrastructure projects this fall while simultaneously working on long-term financial and capital planning through a group appointed by the select board.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the Corey? Your hand is raised.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the goal number 1, and we kind of went around trying to figure out the phrasing, and I may make a recommendation for just changing just how it's laid out. So I think an updated, more functional, comprehensive website, full stop, new bullet point, an inbound communications plan, like a CRM. I don't want to say CRM because then we're getting into definitions, but we could say like a CRM to address resident inquiries. But I would basically say an inbound communications plan to address resident inquiries, and just leave it at that. But if we want to say CRM, we can too, but that would be my change.
Any discussion, Jean?
I think that's fine. We also talked about using the CRM or the inquiries we're getting from residents as a way of doing outbound communications as well. But I don't think we need to necessarily,
Sure,
go down that rabbit hole. One of the things that I did want to raise that I forgot about in our last agenda item, but is also related to this one in a very practical way, is when we're talking about an updated website, and this goes to our communications goal, we also need to make sure we have the functionality. And this is something Civic Plus needs to help us with if we're not doing it, or if we don't know how to do it right now, is to put all of our select board packet under our webpage in a comprehensible way. So people, for example, can see the goals if they want to follow along with the packet as we go through our meeting ahead of time. So I just wanted to put that point out there, including for Chris, as you know, you talk with folks, but I'm fine with your edit, Corey.
Diane?
Yeah, only because Jean made me think of it. And this has nothing to do with the 3 bullets that Paul just read and in the slight amendment. I think that's fine. But I do think one of the biggest things we need to deal with respect to the website is the search feature. Because, you know, a lot of people have said things to me about, you know, not being able to find things on the website, and 98% of the time you can if you can search it. But then how things are organized, that's going to be a huge project to organize things so that if you search town hall, you know, you get the most recent documentations and plans and whatnot. So I just wanted to put that bug out there, but I'm great with the goals as they are. It was a great meeting.
Any other, Corey, your hand is still up. I don't know if you want it up or down.
No, I do. I've got a third tweak just on goal number 3.
Okay. Well, okay. Can you wait till after Paul Grady?
No, mine was more of a compliment to Diane's. That's exactly what I was getting at with Chris and with the other fellow, Justin. It's the search. So I do agree with that. I think that's going to be a hell of a job, but that's why I'm kind of prefacing starting at the beginning with that page, and that search can send you where you need to go, but it's easy to get to. So I agree with exactly what Diane said. If that's something we need to add, I would go along with it.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Corey?
Yeah, and goal number 3, my tweak would be simultaneously working on long-term financial capital planning, and then full stop. We discussed a lot of things in the meeting. We can go through the tapes if we want to, but I don't believe at that meeting because we talked about working with capital budget and advisory and bringing in school. We talked about bringing a lot of people. So we can either expand this to say working through everybody. I think we talked about, you know, having a group, but I don't recall having that phrasing be. So I'd recommend we just say full stop after capital planning.
I think there was some discussion about some people who are very skilled in capital management on a kind of national and international level who happen to live in our town might be willing to be in that group. But dropping that, I don't think it has any impact on the essence of our goals. So I don't have a problem with that. Any other comments, Paul?
I disagree with you. I would leave it because we want to get a group. We want to attract talent, and you know, we want a board that's going to provide or present solid, concrete information as to where our best planning priorities and all that lie. And then we got to search for a way to pay for it. So I think we should be looking at a group, or at least putting it out there. I would leave that in. And I think the townspeople might like it as well.
Jane, were you raising your hand? Yes.
One suggestion for Corey to get what you want and Paul to get what you want, we could do after capital planning, including without limitation, through a group appointed by the select board, and you know, that's just one of the many ways. You're right. You know, we would be having to go to advisory and, you know, engaging with capital and the schools on all you know, different things. But I think, and we're about to talk about this later in an agenda item, you know, functionally one way we were really talking about advancing things is through a committee that's going to help advance those goals.
That would be that's generally referred to as a capital investment plan, a CIP. But Diane, your hand is up.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't want to say that I'm kind of on the fence here, but I do think ending the sentence after planning or capital planning is okay for the reason being that typically our goal is a big goal, and then the objectives are outlined how to get there, and those are the parts that we usually spend the now figuring out, you know. And one of the objectives to reach you know, committing to a long-term capital plan is figuring out how that's going to happen, whether it's a committee of, you know, like Jack, I think you used the phrase blue ribbon panel. I don't know whether it was specific to this item, but, you know, whether we're going to get the advisory committee and the capital committee to work together, or whether we're going to go to a consulting firm. I don't know that we've had that discussion yet. So I think if we can keep the goal very broad and then start drilling down on the objectives to reach that goal in our subsequent conversations, I think that might be just a better way to do it.
Corey and then Paul.
Yeah, I want to clarify. I mean, I think that, well, I'm in complete agreement that we should be looking to have a board to assist us with those things, and we got to talk about that. But also, you know, funding for infrastructure projects and long-term financial capital planning is going to also include us, the town manager, town staff. So by shortening it, it actually makes it, to me, more comprehensive. And I don't want to give the impression that we're going to, and I don't want to give the impression to advisory or capital budget or, you know, people that are doing this all the time, that we are going to make a board to go around them, right? This needs to be inclusive of all the stakeholders in town, not that we're just going to create a committee that goes off on the side and does it. So I would just shorten it up. That way we don't give the false impression, and it also allows us to kind of do everything, because I think we're all on the same page about the mechanisms about what we want to go to. I just think the wording, if we tighten it up, it just works a little bit better.
By the way, I have spoken to various capital budget and made it very clear that this isn't trying to move in onto their turf. I think it's clear that we are going to be pulling on various people and groups. And so I'm not sure that, you know, I think we're arguing over kind of a much ado about nothing. I think it's very clear. But we might want to do kind of is to planning, and Jane, didn't you have an idea of also some language that, you know, indicates we could have some kind of informal advisory group?
Well, here's what I would suggest is I would make a motion to adopt the 3 goals as presented in our packet that Paul read off, but with, as Corey suggested, a separate bullet laid out for a customer relationship management CRM system to address inbound resident inquiries. And for goal 3 to end it at capital planning, and we strike out through a group appointed by the select board. And that would be my motion.
Okay. So discussion on that motion, Paul?
I'm still against that, because I think it doesn't mean what group's going to be appointed, but it's kind of a promise of things to come, that we will at some point appoint a group. It doesn't mean it's happening tomorrow. It doesn't mean it's happening the day after. You know, it's going to take a lot of discussion, but, you know, it lets people know that at some point we will be, because these are priorities we're talking about, and that's the long-term goals. And so I wouldn't, me personally, I wouldn't pull it.
How about through a series of discussions sponsored by the select board?
I would like to second Jean's motion, and to Paul's point, I think we're talking about this later in the meeting, so we're going to talk about it tonight. So, I mean, you know, instant gratification on that front.
Yeah, just to weigh in, I think we're going to create the group right now. What's most important is that not the group, that we actually do the planning and get it done, which will be in part through the group, but also through the implementation of whatever the group proposes. Because as we know, committees can only go so far. It's really on the select board to get things across the finish line. So that's in part why I was comfortable with sort of leaving it at that language, knowing that we have the group on the agenda in, 15 minutes. And I think we can create the group at that point, or, begin to create it, Paul, to your point, to actually get some action moving right now tonight, if that makes a difference.
Paul?
Sorry?
Does that make sense to you?
It makes sense just when we're doing it in the next 15 minutes, so it just makes sense to me to leave it in, but that's okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. So Jean, do you want to make your motion again?
I think it's made and seconded, and so I think we can just vote on it.
I didn't see, Corey, you seconded that?
Yes, sir.
All right, okay. All right, the motion is made and seconded on the three FY 2023 goals. Let's go to a roll call vote. Paul Grady.
Aye.
Diane Kennedy.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Jean Healy DePaul.
Jean Healy
DePaul. Corey Evans.
Corey Evans, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Infrastructure items. We're going to discuss roads, sidewalks, Elm Street field study, and town hall. Basically, I think what we're looking for is on all of these, there are various, select board created committees on there with specified members that are drawn from other boards and commissions around town. We are talking here very specifically about select board created committees and the charges for those committees. You'll note if you go that a lot of them expire 6:30. A lot of the members' terms expire their 1 year. However, my understanding, and we've checked this out, is that select board created committees and their charges are changeable at any time by the creating board, which is the select board. So we're not bound by what they were previously. We are free to do this. And I think my understanding is one of the driving things in our discussions previously has been to find things that are some degree of consensus that can be done fairly quickly and put together the people who can do that, because I think we've had so many of these boards and commissions and bylaw subgroups and working subgroups, and this is a tremendous drain on town resources. We have town officials, planning people, they have to attend all these meetings, and we're spending a lot of time and then keeping track of the minutes, getting somebody to take care of these minutes. And meanwhile, we're running around. We can't get people to be on them frequently because they have too much time on another committee, and then they're on a subcommittee, which takes more of their time. And it's getting perhaps unwieldy. And I think there's this board is responding to kind of a mandate from around town to simplify, get some basic things done that have been kicked around for a while, and get those done. And then other things can be dealt with later. And we have things, like, and this is also kind of going to morph also into the master plan implementation and the working groups. So anyway, let's have at it. Any comments? Diane.
Yeah, I just as a point of order, which you started to get to, which I'm just wondering how this is different from the 8:15 agenda item. I think in terms of the Master Plan Implementation Committee and the working groups, we should leave that agenda item for 8:15 or whenever we get to it. But I understood this agenda item to be basically an update and discussion on some of these projects.
Whichever the board wishes to do the agenda.
I think you should stick to the agenda because that's what we've told the public. They can expect conversation on it at that time.
Well, we can discuss that, and then we can also, under master plan implementation, it also has zoning and Elm Street. But for now, we can have roads and sidewalks and town hall. And who wants to discuss what?
Can I make a suggestion, Jack? Why don't we start, sure. Brian Joyce is here. Let's start with roads and sidewalks. And so, okay. And then we'll move to fields and rec, and then we'll move to town hall. And so with respect to roads and sidewalks, everyone has, I think and if you don't, we can send it around, but the presentation that Katie Dugan did to the board 2 meetings ago on sidewalks. And so that's, one piece of the puzzle that we're considering. And then we asked the town to create, Chris and Brian, to essentially, look through the different roads and areas to come up with a list that we might want to consider. And I think before we hit Elm Street, which is sort of a separate, bigger issue / working group, it makes sense maybe to hear from Brian, if that's okay with you, Jack, to hear.
No, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Brian Joyce, Director of Public Works. So I figured to just talk generally about our road plan. And I know there's been a lot of inquiries recently about our road plan and what it is. So thank you for bringing this agenda to the forefront. It's my favorite topic. So our road plan, we have 37 miles of public road in town and 13 miles of private road. The public road, 37 miles, our goal is to pave each road every 20 years. And with modern bituminous products, that's a good, reasonable lifespan for a road. So that equates to about 1.85 miles of road each year we should pave. Our goal, because not every road is 1.85 miles long, is to do 1.5 to 2 miles of road a year. And that roughly costs about $600,000 to $800,000, and increasing with, I'll get into this in a few minutes, just with the costs of materials worldwide. So our general road plan is that 1.5 to 2 miles of road, and it's prioritized based on age, based on condition, based on the road importance. Is it a main thoroughfare, a tributary, or is it a smaller dead end, for instance? So we part of this coordination in doing it is we need to replace the utilities if it's required, water, sewer, drainage, gas, and sometimes electric and sometimes phone are all subsurface. And if they require work, we need to coordinate with those utilities, which are sometimes towns, sometimes not. And we're subject to the funding of those improvements on the utilities. And when the utilities get replaced, generally you'll see a utility trench down the road for a year. We like to have it settle through a winter, 90 days to 6 months. And then we come back in and we do a mill and overlay, and the trench should be sufficiently settled at that time. So roads, for instance, right now, Sawyer Street, roads are really at their worst just prior to being paved. And it's the process for every road. You're going to see utility trenches and really some really tough driving situations just prior to it being paved. The select board a few years ago adopted road street regulations that once we do pave a road, there's a 5-year protection, strict moratorium on no excavation. So that's protecting our capital investment in our roads. And then from years 6 to 10, there's an early opening fee, looking to basically dissuade cuts in the roadway, because cuts in the roadway are the single biggest contributor to road degradation. So really, we have a 10-year protection plan on our roads, and then in that second 10 years, you're working on planning and prioritizing and getting those roads paved in that 20-year cycle. So that's our general road plan. Just town-wide, the town, our roads were a beneficiary of the Little Harbor project. That's coming up on 20 years old. So when water and sewer was installed in all our coastal roads, part of that project included curb-to-curb paving. So a lot of the roads in and around Little Harbor, and really from Hull Street down to the village area, were the beneficiary of new pavement all at once. So those roads are coming up on 20 years, and it's going to be, we'll need to make some decisions, which is why I invite this discussion. I think it's great that, do we want to keep on the schedule of 2 miles per year, or do we try to bump it up and do more mileage, at chunks at a time, which would require more funding and maybe a bonding on that. Just on the issue of product, we're fighting price increases in all materials, and that includes asphalt, which is very fuel intensive. Right now we're at $90 a ton. We're part of a consortium contract with 12 other communities on the South Shore, where we pool all our tonnage together to get a better purchase price, and we bid that through MAPC. So that's great for buying power, but it also, it's a challenge on scheduling when you're trying to schedule. Everyone's trying to pave during the summertime, and you're sharing the same contractor, with all these other communities. But that bid is going to be up for next year, and just in speaking with folks in the industry, that I anticipate we're probably going to have a 30% increase in most of the material items on there. So our cost today of say $600,000 to $800,000 is going to go up, and that's just on a mill and overlay for excuse me, for roadways. Sidewalks are generally about $1 million.
Excuse me, Brian. Brian, is that a cost per mile?
Yeah, that's a rough cost per mile.
Okay.
Not all roads are created equal, so catch basins, castings increase the cost. Okay. If it's narrower or
yeah. Okay. I just wanted to double check on that.
Yeah. So if you want a ballpark figure just for budgeting, do $600,000 per mile for roadway, and do $1 million a mile for sidewalk. Sidewalk is more intensive. You have ADA requirements. It's handwork. You can't get a milling machine in there. It's a lot of, it's more labor intensive than a roadway that you could drive a milling machine down.
All right, so it's $1 million a mile for sidewalk, standalone sidewalk.
Again, yeah, just we're looking at rough ballpark figures for budgeting and long-term capital planning that you guys were talking about.
And if you do them both at the same time, is there any savings? Or is it now $1.6 million a mile paved road?
There are some savings, and if we do get into the Elm Street corridor, there's the savings if you have, this, you don't have mobilization and demobilization costs, if the contractor's out there. And what we try to do is to get sidewalks done as we do streets, unless the sidewalk is in decent shape or we have a funding shortfall.
Okay. Any other comments right now? Or I'm asking from Brian. I see Diane, and I see Corey. Diane.
So just really quickly on that $1 million a mile for sidewalks, is that for new sidewalks, or is that for the degradation of older sidewalks?
So that's new sidewalk. So the law, when you touch a sidewalk to do construction on it, you need to bring it up to ADA standards. And a lot of our sidewalks, you could probably tell, are not ADA compliant. So when you do that, you need ramps, you need curb cuts, you need the requisite 5-foot width, and a lot of our sidewalks are just not up to code.
So even a repair would effectively be new in a lot of ways.
Correct.
Yeah, Corey, just 1 second, but I just want to double check. Many of our sidewalks don't have 5 feet. So what do you do when, 5 feet requires a taking of a private or knocking trees down or a variety of things like that?
That's a great question. I mean, you look at Sawyer Street. So Sawyer Street is going to be ADA compliant, and you can see if you drive down Sawyer Street, the width of the excavation required to make that 5-foot sidewalk, which is going to include new granite curbing. There'll be, it's relatively simple, straight shot, but it does have ADA ramps at Fair Oaks and at the other end. So if you need to do land takings, then that's just increase the cost. And it does factor into whether you want to even do a sidewalk or not. If it's cost prohibitive, or if it's you don't have the room, you might take it from the roadway, and then you're decreasing kind of travel width. So it's a balancing act.
Thank you, Brian. Corey, and then we have Brian Host, who's in the audience, who'd like to speak, but we just want to make sure everybody in the board is fine. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, and Jean's got her hand up too. Jean, I think I was before you, so I'm good. Okay.
Yeah, yes, you were.
Brian, thanks very much. And I've got a couple things. I'll try to be brief, but there may just be a little bit of back, so just give me a little bit of leeway, please. The first thing is, I think, have you had a chance to review what Jean mentioned earlier is the Master Plan Implementation Committee's sidewalk priority goals? Have you been sent that document? And obviously we're going to need your feedback if we want to, this board has spoken, we want to do sidewalks, we want to get funding for it. Obviously, your office needs to lead be right at the table with us as we talk about master plan. So have you had a chance to look at that, and do you have any feedback on kind of what they've identified?
Not since her presentation, but I've had several meetings in the development of that list with Katie Dugan and the MPIC folks. So,
and you think it's a good starting point just as we go forward? Okay,
sure,
great.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, I think when the town is thinking about sidewalks, thinking about paving roads, it's more the acute, like, well, this road is terrible. So can you just give us, I'm thinking like South Main Street, obviously Elm Street's a project, but just if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of backstory on some of the high priority roads and kind of what's keeping them from being taken care of quickly if there's outstanding issues.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So Elm Street has been on our short list for 4 years now. Elm Street had an older water main. The water main was replaced, and so subsurface utilities are complete. But at this point, there are 2 alternative designs for Elm Street. Basically, one with parking on both sides, another one that has parking on one side and a bigger grass area on the south side. So really, we need to make that decision to proceed with the paving of Elm Street. And that Elm Street is not just going to be Elm Street, it's going to continue around, and folks who travel this area, Margin Street and Atlantic Avenue up to Whitehead Road is in really bad shape. That's going to be all inclusive with the paving of Elm Street in whatever configuration is Elm Street. But the decision by this board and any other stakeholders, that's really what we're waiting for to get Elm Street paved. On South Main Street, again, that road has been on the short list. We need a decision on, are we going to sewer that area? That ties into potential regional discussion, or maybe even just sewering our own South Main Street section of Cohasset. So that decision point is kind of what's holding up that section of roadway. There's several other roads: is Doan Street, Church Street, Beechwood, Ash, Short, Smith, King Street sidewalks. All these have a variety of utility coordination, verifying water main age. There was some water main rehabilitation about 20 to 30 years ago, where older water mains, you know, up to 80 years old at that point, were cleaned and lined. And now these water mains are over 100. Cleaning and lining is a perfectly reasonable rehab of a water main, but depending on soil conditions, those 100-year-old mains are could be brittle and they may need to be replaced. So that will require some test pits and some testing on those mains to make sure, you know, if we pave it, we're not going to be digging up for leaks and things like that. So I hope that answered the question on some of that. Sure.
Or it's at least it's the beginning. Gene,
and one follow up sorry, Mr. Creighton, for South Main, if the sewer commission decides to move forward, does the paving then fall under their project, or does that still have to come out of our Chapter 90 funding if they do decide to move forward with the sewer project?
We could do it either way. We could include that cost in the. I would prefer to include the cost in the overall project cost, or they could just do a trench repair, and then we would be handling the rest.
I'm done. Thank you.
Jane.
Thank you, Brian. I do live on South Main Street, and it did take me an hour to pour this water out of my faucet. But no, I'm just kidding. Not really. So one question that I had, well, two pretty specific questions. Elm Street. Do we have any money in Elm Street from the water department when that water main work was previously done? As, you know, a part of repaving generally? I think we do. But could you refresh my memory on how much that is?
I'd need to verify that, but I think that project was pretty much expended. And they did a trench repair. I don't think it included curb to curb paving.
Okay.
Which is what's required down there. And just, you know, looking at Elm Street versus some of the other roads, you'll notice how wide it is. And so part of the design discussion is, do we give it a diet? You know, and just really making a decision on that configuration is what we need to do.
My second question is on Beechwood and King Street. I know that there's a lot of interest, and this was actually, and it's funny, Elm Street actually wasn't on the list of streets that people want repaired the most when you look at Katie Dugan's and the Master Plan Implementation Committee's presentation, but Beechwood and King Street was a very high priority item for people. And so I'm curious as to your thoughts on Beechwood and King Street, because that is pretty fast road, very heavily utilized, a lot of people on it too, probably our longest road in Cohasset. What are your thoughts on repairs there, including sidewalks?
I think Beechwood is on one of the top of the list for repairing the sidewalk. That has existing sidewalks, you know, just in a various levels of disrepair. King Street has no sidewalks, but it would be it's a top you know, wish list on where to add a sidewalk. If you put a sidewalk on King Street, and with the addition of the Sawyer Street sidewalk, you could theoretically walk on a sidewalk from Doan Street all the way to the Village area on sidewalks, you know, with a safe crossing at 3A if that was installed. So King Street there's been a lot of inquiries about King Street, a lot of interest in putting in sidewalk down there. But again, that's just a roadway, and it would require some, you know, engineering and maybe some potential land taking. But there's the area down there. There's a lot more area there than there is, say, in the downtown Village area.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the taking issue, because I drove down King Street and was looking at the sidewalks from that perspective, and it seems like there's some tight areas in there at certain locations that might be tricky. And the sort of last follow-up question that I had, I just want to make sure we're on the same page, including for the public who may be watching and interested in this issue. When we're saying we're going to repave your street and then there's a moratorium for 5 years, if you want to install a generator, for example, you can't do so because you can't cut into our streets. And so that is a consideration for people who may be living on that street, that this is sort of the cost benefit, right? Of
just, can we clarify that? Because I mean, whether or not you install a generator has to do with the pipe sizing or whatever. So that may not necessarily be true.
Yeah.
I just don't want to scare people with, you can't install a generator if we pay.
Corey, could you let Jean finish, please?
Sorry, I just didn't want to scare people.
Well, to the extent that National Grid needed to cut in and install a gas line, which some people need to, as evidenced by our cut up streets all across Cohasset, is that what we're talking about as a practical matter?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that point up, because it's always a point of discussion. You know, our road paving list, we send out letters ahead of time saying your road is coming to paving. If you have any utility or work or business in the roadway, please do it now. And that invariably usually is the gas company and people converting from oil to gas or something like that. And once the road's paved, it is the 5-year moratorium. So, you know, if folks are on the list to have this on the street paving list, you know, really consider what you need to do in the street and get your work done ahead of time.
Yeah, could we bring on Brian Host?
Sure, I'm on, Jack. I'm not sure I'm on video, but hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, Brian Joyce, I just joined at the beginning of your comments, and I just want to make sure I heard something correctly, which is that the new estimate, or the current estimate, is $600,000 per mile of road replacement. Is that accurate? And what can you provide more clarity on that? Because that is, well, I'll just park it there until I hear the response.
Yeah. So 600 is a rough estimate for a mile of roadway, mill and overlay, and I'm anticipating, you know, increases in the next bid item. You know, I'll give you, for instance, Jerusalem Road, North Jerusalem Road. That was roughly around 500,000 for a mile. Again, that didn't have a lot of castings. If you were down in the Village area or even on Elm Street, there's a few more castings that would increase the cost. Granite curbing increases the cost. You know, that's basically a straight mill and over.
Excuse me, Brian.
Yeah. Yes.
We need your address, please.
My address?
Yes.
29 Heather Drive, and also
Okay.
Brian was chairman of the Capital Budget Committee, just for the public's benefit.
Yeah.
So Brian, what I'm trying to reconcile, so second question, this may answer it, is it 600,000 per 2-lane road?
So we don't have many 2-lane roads. You have just a lane each direction, north and south.
But Jerusalem obviously is a 2-lane road at 500,000, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's
okay. Let me cut to the chase. What I'm trying to reconcile. Okay, we did this exercise a couple of years ago. We came up with the conclusion that we needed to spend about 500,000, maybe 550 per year to do our 2 miles of roadways. And what I'm hearing today is that it's 600,000 per mile, not for 2 miles. So the annual cost would be $2.2 million per year if I just take that 600K and apply it by the miles, if I don't reconcile this some other way, which is completely different than, you know, the capital budget plan that was put in place the last time that we did this analysis. So, you know, for sort of the benefit of the broader group, you know, capital budget puts forth 300,000 each year towards roads of capital budget funding. And the assumption is that there's, you know, somewhere between 150 and 200 grand coming out of Chapter 90 each year, which gets us somewhere up around 450 or 500 all in. And once we had a better handle on what the true annual cost was after several years of this program, you know, we could true it up and if necessary, adjust the 300K coming out of capital budget. We don't really have the benefit of good numbers because, you know, our road paving has been delayed by basically 3 years. We've got, you know, 3 years worth of capital and 3 years worth of Chapter 90 funds built up. So Brian, I really want to reconcile this because, you know, if the
So Brian, that number includes anticipated increase in asphalt costs and materials. So we were a couple of years ago at $80 a ton, roughly, yeah. And we anticipate in the next bid will probably be somewhere between 110 and 120.
Not 160. I mean, this is a more than doubling what's been budgeted.
Right.
And the 600 comment was made with the suggestion that you anticipated it to go up from there. So, I mean, we can take this up offline, but I can't make any sense of this number at all. And it's not consistent with what's in the capital plan.
Okay. May I make a suggestion? Brian and Brian, could you offline come to some kind of working figure and a parameter that the select board and the town can use later on? I don't think we have to do it.
I think that would be helpful. Whatever the number is, we need to fund it. That's fine, but I just, whatever the number is, it has to be in the plan in order to get funded.
No, I know. That's why I'd like you.
Right. The only other comment I'd make is I want to encourage people to recognize that this is an annual cost forever. It happens every year. Okay. Which is why we put 300,000 in the capital budget towards roads this year, even though we have, 2 years of funding already in the bank and we have got some catch up to do on the work. No one should ever consider this a one-time or intermittent cost. And in that perspective, I would encourage people to never, ever consider bonding roads because they will never go away. This is an annual cost.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's a very good point, Brian. And thank you. And by the way, I think this underscores the issues that we're going to be facing as a town when we start putting together all of this along with a capital investment plan, because the capital investment plan would include the fact that roads are a continual expense. And maybe you have to fund them, but you have to refund them. And there's a lot of other things. So, and what we're seeing now is these 3 agenda items are all tied in together. But anyway, moving forward on the infrastructure items, we have field study and town hall. I think we have an idea with roads and sidewalks. We need some more information. We know what they're likely to cost. And let's discuss, Elm Street, field study, and town hall. Jean.
Well, and I'm sorry, Jack, I'm not sure I'm ready to move on from roads and sidewalks.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't know how others feel, but I think it would be helpful to get a sense of the board in terms of, whether we think we just need to readjust on the annual capital funding side and how best to do that, or whether we need to make an investment in some of these roads that have been, pain points for people for a long time, and or whether we need to start repaving sidewalks too, because I'm not sure that road number, Brian, post that you were talking about includes the cost of sidewalks, which are obviously very substantial. And
it does not, Jean.
Okay. So that would be a factor too, so I'm curious as to what other people think, because I do think we have to make some decisions in a relatively short order.
I saw Paul Grady had his hand up.
Yeah, Jack, I agree with Jean. And I'm also listening to Brian host. And so, there is some disparity, I'm guessing, between the numbers and the priorities. So I think we have to get a clear line as to what the cost is. And again, it is an ongoing cost. It's not just something that you do want to bond. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. That would be more of a building or a school or something like that. But it's going to last 150 years. But I would like to get a true cost and then, more priority, and maybe Brian and Brian work together and come up with an actual figure as to what makes sense on the cost. So I wouldn't just move on from it.
Is that feasible, Brian Joyce, to you understand?
Yeah. No, it's and just one quick comment. So again, not all roads are created equal, and 2-lane roads are not the majority of the roads in town. We have the majority of our roads are single lane, and we certainly can get get rough figures on each of those roads. So you can hit your 2 miles without having to pave the main thoroughfares, which are obviously a higher ticket number than the smaller side roads.
Is it possible, Brian, to come up with a number or the amount of roads that need to be paved every year, and as kind of an eternal number? In other words, this is how much per year, so we can put it into the budget and find out where it is. Is it possible to come up with something that's reasonably accurate?
So our next bids are due in December of next year, and that will be the real price point on the roads for that 2-year term following. And you know, before then, we can certainly get estimates on our current contract rate.
Yeah, and we'd like to see the number of miles and miles of roads and sidewalks that needs to be done. The purpose of this is to get a handle on what the expenses the town is going to incur on a reasonable and a projected things. And so we're not looking for a budget number to get something approved. We're looking for the hard facts of what it's really going to cost the town. Okay, and Paul, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just have a question. If it's out there, I haven't seen it, so forgive me. Brian, do we have, you know, a proposed paving schedule for all the roads in town, at least all the public ways, and a prioritized paving schedule? I see this 1 through 10. I mean, I look at Smith Place. I happen to live near that, so I know what that looks like. But do we have a prioritized paving schedule for all of the roads in place, or something, or is it just a rotating schedule? I mean, I'd like to see something that looks at every road.
We have a list of, you know, and it's prioritized based on our own condition assessment and when last paved. That is getting updated as we speak. There's a consultant doing a review of all of our roads and prioritizing them with a condition assessment and level of repairs required. And we should have that report deliverable by mid to late July. So I think once we have that report, which we'll compare with our street list, we'll have a better semblance of what we want to hit first.
So that will have all the roads in Cohasset. And will that be accessible for the town?
All of the public roads. It'll be accessible to you,
roads.
and you know, however you want to disseminate it is fine.
When might we see that? I'm sorry.
July is the due date on that report is July.
July 1st, July 30th?
I think the end of July.
Okay. Obviously, if it's sooner, it's more helpful. I think we're beginning to sense that there may be some urgency developing because there's a lot of other projects. But obviously, we don't want it done sooner at the expense of accuracy. Okay. Corey?
Yeah, I was just going to try to make some kind of macro level observations here. I think, you know, our board has set some goals about kind of what we want to do with infrastructure. Like we've said, sidewalks and roads are important, and we want to make some forward progress on this. We've also talked about how we fund those. And again, we have a whole committee chaired by Brian, which kind of already has the math and has been doing this math for years and years and years on this front. And I think, you know, we all want to understand it, but I think back to what I said earlier, they need to at least begin the discussion for us, because I think we're already kind of off base here. And I think what we should do is continue this discussion in a joint meeting with them kind of as soon as possible. And everything, roads, sidewalks, our financing committee, all that stuff needs to be done at that joint meeting. And we need to have all the mental energy for that one meeting to really put down what we want to do as goals, policy, and then have the capital budget right there and advisory right there to say, well, okay, this is how we have to go through it. Is it, are we overriding stuff? Are we tweaking budget? I mean, this is all mechanics, right? So we've talked about maybe doing a debt exclusion, but if that's not the right mechanism to do what we want, we have to get that feedback now. We can't wait to, 3 or 4 more weeks and charge committees and start doing work only to figure out that we've gone down the whole wrong path. So I would just say at this point, I would recommend we just jump. We agree to have a meeting immediately with those, a joint meeting, and we take all these questions and we address them then, because I think that's the best outcome.
Okay. Well, we have an agenda that we're working through to discuss a variety of related issues. So any other, comments right now, or shall we, Mr. Grady and then Gene?
Just one, I do agree with Corey's idea of a meeting, but I'd like to see the report that Brian was speaking of come out first, because that's going to open up a whole can of worms in regard to new questions, I would think. That's just a thought.
Well, Gene?
I'm not opposed to a joint meeting, but I do think it's important that the select board come in with something in mind in terms of what the goal is that we're shooting for. And from my standpoint, I can just tell you my initial impression based on everything that the Bryans are saying is that, I think we want to look very carefully at what sidewalk investments we want to make, because that is not a part of our 10-year capital plan. We want to look very carefully at that. We need a paving schedule, and we need to figure out a real paving schedule. And we need to figure out what exactly our current capital plan can and cannot, realistically adhere to. But I think in terms of what the select board was talking about at our goal setting meeting, I think our real input and value add is frankly outside of the current capital stabilization fund as to sidewalks. And so on the sidewalk front, I think there, and I'll just be frank, I think right now, everything that I've seen, including from the previous sidewalk work that's been done, is, really start thinking about Beechwood and King Street and investing some money in those areas that are often sort of not prioritized, but it's clear that, there's a community desire to do so. And it would match up well too with our current Sawyer Street sidewalk to connect those parts of the town. And I think it's clear that we have some needs throughout the entirety of the town to, really look at the sidewalks more holistically, but we need to start somewhere. And I think that Beechwood and King Street is one place that I would want to really begin focusing on as a practical matter in terms of what we can do there.
I would agree with
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is—
Could I just, I'm sorry,
Oh,
I've
ahead,
had my hand up and you're taking public comment before select board.
I know, Diane,
but I do want to ask for clarification on King Street, which section of King Street we're talking about.
Diane, I couldn't see your hand up. That's why I was—
Sorry.
So King Street, Lower King is the one that's up towards the T station. That actually has a sidewalk on it. Upper King Street, I think,
goes
down by the water
Beechwood
treatment plant, has no sidewalk, and that would be where the sidewalk is. That's 1.15 miles.
So tonight, when we've been talking about King Street, we've been talking about the section like between Stop and Shop and Beechwood.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. Okay, Diane, I'm sorry. By the way, everybody should know that if you end up on the top tier of the boxes, I may not see that yellow. So waving your hand like that, I'd really appreciate that, because I want to make sure everybody has something, needs to speak. And Diane is very correct that board members speak before members of the public. And I apologize, Diane. So what's the sense? What do we want to do with this, right now? Do we want to continue as we're moving through? We have all these agenda items that are very much, related. I think the consensus is we really need two things. Number one, we need to know the capital budget, which I think Brian Host will be working with Brian about what's an ongoing. And then, Gene, I think what you're saying is there are things that need to be done that need to be above and beyond the ongoing maintenance. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's just not accounted for in the 10-year capital plan and ongoing capital planning.
And should we suggest some things that we'd like to see on there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, given the timelines that we're under, I think we have to, take a leadership role and let people react to it. And so I think, if we need to do a separate meeting, I think that's fine, but I think we should come with some ideas.
Hi, Diane. Go ahead.
Yeah, just in terms of another meeting, I do think it's probably worth having a public input meeting on this because, by the way, my phone's blowing up as we speak. What about my street? What about my street? And, that was one of the things we did in the master plan, which is, was adopted only 2 years ago. It was relatively recent. We had, hundreds of people participate in prioritizing some of the roads. North and South Main Street and Elm Street, obviously, because of work that we knew was happening there. So I do think that while Brian gets the paving schedule in place, while we work to outline the next steps in terms of building out a capital plan and a capital financing plan, which is almost more important than a capital plan in a lot of ways, that, we could also have a public discussion. And I think also with respect to roads, I think it's always worth letting the community know how many of the roads are private ways. And I just have to put in a snarky little comment when Brian talked earlier about the paving of North Main Street, Beach Street, South Main Street, some South Main Street, Jerusalem Road, Atlantic Ave. That was on the backs of the 350 homeowners who were assessed the Little Harbor assessment. Many of those people living on private ways where people can dig into the street every day, and they carry a lot of burden in terms of both paying for those main roads that got paved, and then also having to take care of their own road. And I think it's really important for us to be clear to the community some of the expectations and the moratoriums and everything like that. So maybe just a big street sidewalk public conversation should be had.
Yeah, well, okay, thanks, Diane. Diane, now you live on a private road, so you really know exactly what the facts are. So you're paying taxes, but you're not getting road service. Okay. So anyway, Jean, did I see another?
Yeah, I would just say that, again, relying on the Master Plan Implementation Committee's presentation of the survey they did 2 years ago, and where people were prioritizing sidewalks, that's the data point that I was looking at. If we need to redo that, including another survey, I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea because people have been, changing patterns. We have a lot of new people in town. And I think that could be something that maybe we want to talk with Chris about in order to get that community input and communication going. And so I don't.
Go ahead, Diane. Yeah.
I don't think it's a matter of redoing any of the studies. I think it's just a matter of socializing them and making sure people have an opportunity to understand where our priorities are coming from as we set.
And we certainly do have that body of work and data. It's 2 years old, it's usable. And to Jean's point, maybe it needs to be updated, but we know we need to, we know we need to do this. So, so roads, and we're kind of like, we want to find out the ongoing, and we also see what needs to be new. Is that everybody kind of agree on? We want to do that. Hearing nobody disagree. Okay, now let's move on to Elm Street. We have field study and town hall. Where do we want to start on that? Okay.
Why don't we just get Elm off though?
Okay, keep in mind that we are now at 8:58 after 8:15. So on the Master Plan Implementation Committee, zoning and Elm Street, change in composition of that particular committee, which we can do whatever we choose to do with, and that mixes right in with Elm Street. Do we want to discuss those together? Because, in deference to what Diane pointed out, they're different things, although now we are in a time frame on the agenda so people know that it's not being spoken and discussed before they were on. Do we have thoughts on field study and town hall? And perhaps that would be a shorter discussion. I'm open to suggestions from the board. How do we move? How do we discuss these and move it along efficiently?
May I, Mr.
Yeah, Corey.
Yeah, I mean, I think in our goal setting, I mean, we talked about these big infrastructure items as a potential for a debt exclusion, goal, getting these things added out, figuring, and I think we need to take, I think what we're spinning our wheels here because there's a lot going on. And I think what we need is, again, what I said before, but again, is a special meeting for this with a packet that has all the work on Elm Street, that has the field study in it, that has the town hall committee ready to go. We got to bring Elm Street corridor in there. We got to have Michelle ready to go on the field study. And we have to make some decisions in that meeting about the dollar ask. We have to make those priority decisions. We don't have the materials right now in our packet. We don't have the preparation to really make those calls, because that's really the decision point we have in front of us, is how much money are we going to ask the town to spend on these things, and see if the town thinks that our priorities, or the priorities we've identified, are the same as theirs. So I think we need to just have our own meeting with a special meeting for that, fully prepared, fully ready to talk about these numbers. And that's how we move forward efficiently.
Okay, Jane.
So I don't disagree that we need a meeting on, the further substance of these, but there is a lot we know. And so I think it's important to begin these preliminary discussions right now, including on Elm Street, on the field study, which is linked in the agenda to all the applicable materials. Town hall, we know what's going on there. We have Michelle, who's been working with the town hall building committee, who can weigh in on that in terms of where we are and where we're not, in terms of updated information from the CRM, because some of this, we just frankly don't have the information right now, which may be a consideration. So let's talk about, for example, well, let's talk on Elm Street. Actually, I would like to talk about that because I think that plays into roads and sidewalks. And I think that with the Elm Street committee meeting this Thursday, I think they would benefit from appreciating and knowing where the select board is from a preliminary standpoint in terms of the alternatives that are out there. It's been posted, it's all publicly available. It's going to be considered by the committee. And one thing I would like to see the committee do is provide us with specific recommendation as to the Elm Street segment that does not include the Cove area, and a redesign of the triangle. I would like to prioritize getting that stretch done. I personally do not like the idea of cutting up the triangle, that for a variety of reasons, including we're going to have really heavy construction around in that area, but that new development coming in, we have another brand new development that's being proposed by the planning board, and we don't know what the traffic impact is with that yet and how that's going to pan out. We have an ongoing resiliency study in that exact area. We don't know how that's going to pan out either. And I just think that it's not at a point where I feel like we are ready to make an investment of that amount for what is being proposed. And I don't agree, frankly, with the two alternatives that are being presented with respect to the Cove area and the huge amount of money, given all of the other sidewalk and road needs. But I would like to get the main part of Elm Street finished as a part of this package, and would like to hear what that committee is going to do in terms of a final recommendation from that committee. And then I think the select board needs to own it and just make a decision, and then we're done and we move forward with what that decision is, and that group sunsets. And that's what I would like to see happen.
Okay. Yeah, I think, Diane.
No, I just on that, the Elm Street corridor is meeting, and I've seen the plans, and the plans have been out there, but I didn't know that we were going to have a discussion on plan A versus plan B and some options for this evening. And I think that I can certainly take the comments that we have tonight back to the committee on whenever we're meeting. I think it's later this week. And then have them come back. I agree. We need to start moving things to the point where our investigative study committees that know all the answers actually make a presentation to us and say, this is the project we're recommending. We listened to Jean's comments about A, B, C, and Diane's about, you know, D, E, and F. We would like to present this as our recommendation for the following reasons. Then we can ask our questions, and then we make a decision and move on, which I do agree with, but I don't want to get too detailed into, you know, the actual plans tonight, given that at least wasn't, I figured on infrastructure items, we would just be given updates on these projects. And I think that the second conversation about the working committees is another discussion. It's not the project, you know. Well, so I would see Elm Street being able to come back to us at our next meeting with a recommendation up or down.
Yeah, no, I think, Diane, to your point, it's time for us to start, and to Jean's point as well, it's time to say, give us your recommendations. We like it, we don't, what are we going to do? We need to move these projects, and some of them are maybe too complex for now. Maybe, you know, the public support is no longer there. We don't know. But the purpose of getting on the agenda is we need to dive into this, and we need to realize we've got to start making some decisions. And Paul, go ahead.
I thought we had dived into it, Jack. We've got two plans, an A and a B. And I thought they were looking for the select board's recommendations. I mean, I have mine. As far as Elm Street, I'm for paving it, and that'd be about the size of it. But I don't see any changes to the island. I don't agree with that, especially at cost to the town. I do not agree with that in the slightest. And we also put our flags there. But if we're going to pave it, my thoughts are Elm Street should be added just onto the list. Is it a priority, a true priority, or is South Main, or is anything else? I think, and I've said it before, even when I'm planning, Elm Street should be taken in context with every other road in Cohasset. And that's my thoughts on it, and that's the way I'd stand by it. And, you know, I mean, it's great on paper, but it's a road and it goes downtown. It should be taken care of, but so should every other road. And I don't see adding any extra expense. So I thought we were coming in tonight to discuss Elm Street.
We're discussing it right now, and that's why it's on the agenda, so people can, you know, voice their opinions. And Corey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just extremely uncomfortable with what we're doing here. We have a committee, the Elm Street Working Group, and they're not here. I don't know if they were invited or not. We don't have anyone from plan. I mean, this is bigger. The select board's we're not supposed to play Sim City here, where we just kind of lay things out as we see, you know, however we want to, or whatever. That's why we have working groups. We have, you know, Elm Street was there were studies, and there's outreach, and there were all these things. And what we need to do is basically ask the working group to give their recommendation to us, and then we can decide. We can't decide in this meeting, okay, we're just going to tell you what to do. That's not how this works. I pulled up an email from Tom Callahan, who's now the chair of the planning board. I think he's also chairing the master plan implementation group. And, you know, his recommendation is to have the working group meet one more time, make a recommendation, have the working group get basically absorbed by master plan implementation committee itself, and then, you know, bring a decision, and then we can go A or B. That's the right process here, as laid out by Tom. So that's what I would recommend we do, is follow that process.
If Tom's not here to speak to that, Corey, you probably should.
I can read the email verbatim, and then we can put it in the minutes. I mean, it's
okay if you're willing to do that, or read it in the record. But and Tom Callahan and Cassie are looking to speak, so we'll hear it directly from Tom Callahan. Jean.
Yeah, so Corey, that's exactly what I suggested in terms of Elm Street should meet one more time, provide a recommendation, and then we go from there and we make a decision. But what I do think the select board needs to start doing is not having groups go off and do a whole bunch of work that we never intend to vote on, and not give them guidance about what they're doing, including from the standpoint of the executive body of the town, which is what the select board is. And I realized that, you know, Elm Street has been working for a long time. There's a lot of lot of up and downs on Elm Street, as is evident by this discussion. And so I just want to be transparent about where I am, particularly when I look at all the other needs in town and all the other sidewalks like Beechwood and King Street, and look at these prices adding up. And so I do intend to be pretty forward leaning about what my opinion is, because I think it's important that they know that ahead of time as they work through their project. And if they want to, you know, make this come to fruition and get the votes they need on this board.
Okay, Paul?
I've been just as clear when I was on the planning, and I want to be just as clear on the select board. But I also think that when they come back, they should take into account what are the priorities of the town. You know, if you do a survey or anything along those lines. But you know, I agree with Gene. You just don't come back with a committee that's voting for something, you're putting together something that we never charged them to do. That's all. But I think the priorities, where are the priorities? And I agree with as I said, every other road in Cohasset taken into context. So they should know that up front. That's where I'm standing on it.
Okay, that's good. I see Diane. Now is that the hand?
The hand, yeah.
All right, Diane, go for it.
No, one thing I do want to say is boards have made this a priority. It was a priority that came out of the master plan, and that's why we made the 5 working group committees now, albeit that was 2 years ago. And I think this is one thing that, as we discuss long-term capital planning, it's really important that we listen to our advisory committees and the people that are doing the work, because the 5 of us change every year and have different priorities every year. And we need to make sure we're staying on course and we're not constantly rewriting, relitigating topics that have been discussed ad nauseum, frankly, with the public in public meetings, bringing in advisors, paying consultants, et cetera, et cetera. On the Elm Street, you know, I don't necessarily disagree that I'm not fully on board with the full plan, but I think we have charged a committee, the select board in 2020 in the summer, agreed to the priorities, agreed to setting up a group of citizens to meet very regularly, to reach out to the community, to get input on the priorities. And I don't think we should just, you know, with each turnover of an elected board, change the priorities. I think we should wrap them up, and we should try to wrap them up as quickly as possible. And I think we should get to a decision one way or the other and move on to the next, and then work on new priorities. But to say that we haven't charged them, or this hasn't been a priority, is incorrect. It just happened not to be within the last 4 weeks.
Paul?
I respect everything Diane said, but that, to me, that's the purpose of elections, is people do want some kind of change, so they make a vote for what they want. And things can change in 2 years. They can change in a year. They can change in 6 months. So again, and there's all due respect to the boards. They've worked hard. The committees work hard. But, you know, I hate to use the word, but elections have consequences. And the consequences here is we promised a transparent, open board and to hopefully get things done. And that's no disparagement any past boards. It's just this board. And it is Elm Street right now a priority. It's a nice street. You pave it, and, you know, to me, and move along. But, you know, I'd like to see what people think and what the boards think. But again, you know, that's why they voted. That's why they voted for us, is to, you know, to be their voice. So I'll stick with that.
I think it's also, we should note that there are some reports coming up from these committees, and they will be presented in a very short period of time. They're due. And I think it's very clear that one of the things we need to have that, you know, presented. But we also need, as a board, to start discussing it. And you know, these discussions may not necessarily always be comfortable. We might have people disagree on various things, but, you know, we've got to start, you know, making decisions. We've got to start seeing these. And yes, has the town changed in 2 years? Are there different points of view that are coming out? That happens all the time. We're not bound to the past, but neither do we wish to ignore the work of these people. So I have two of the members of this board who wish to speak, but I just want to make sure that there's nobody on the board who wants to speak before we bring Cassie and Tom on. Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay, I don't see anybody waving their hand or anything. So Tracy, did Tom or Cassie, who signed on first?
They're both here to speak. Oh, here comes Tom.
Oh, there's Tom. Come on, sit up.
Yeah, there's Tom lounging, being comfortable, didn't want to speak tonight. But my perspective as a member of the planning board is that the redesign of that intersection was a part of our decision. The idea came from us, not the developer. And I think there's this misconception that this would somehow benefit the developer. And I've expressed this point of view to a couple of selectmen individually where I disagree with them. But the redesign of the intersection, which is my focus, I frankly don't care about the rest of Elm Street being widened or bike lanes, is though that I don't think people perceive what this new hotel project is going to be. We are gaining valuable public space along the harbor, which is a great benefit, but the building is going to be taller and brought right up to the sidewalk, unlike the hotel. And I don't think the project is a detriment to the town, but it's going to be different. The triangle is useless where it is now. The intersection is unsafe as it is now, with or without the hotel project. And moving the redesign of the intersection is going to soften the visual impact of this project. And I don't think people appreciate that. It was done during Zoom. You know, we didn't have a lot of, it was in the beginning of Zoom, so we didn't have a lot of public participation beyond cheerleaders for the project. And I really don't think the public understands what this project is going to look like. And this is simply from a perspective of the public benefit of softening the impact of this otherwise valuable project to the community. And I think people have gotten caught up, well, it's a benefit for the developer, or it's an either or with the rest of roads in town. No, it isn't. We've talked about Elm Street redevelopment for years as an essential link between the village and the harbor. That has benefits to the community, more so than repaving some side streets somewhere else in town. We cannot pave all the streets in town all at once. They have priorities. This intersection is a priority, and it's part of a planning board decision. And when we say, well, the developer should pay for it, no, we don't have the legal authority to do that. We extracted a contribution from the developer, but we don't have the kind of bylaws like cities have for linkage and forcing developers to pay for this. I just think this is so short-sighted and really not in the best interest of the community as a whole, because I really don't think the community knows what's coming.
Okay.
And they're going to be shocked. They're going to be shocked when they see it. I'm prepared to take the hit when people start complaining about it. And I hope you all are too, because it's going to be a visual impact on that roadway in exchange for the benefits we're gaining of public space along the water.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Cassie?
I was just going to go back to both Diane and Jean's comments regarding bringing work product and presentation.
Cassie, I'm sorry, both you and Tom need to identify where you live. And
sure. My name is Cassie Malatesta. I live at 153 Sawyer Street, and I am a member of the Master Planning Implementation Committee, as well as the Zoning Bylaw Working Group.
Thank you. And Tom, you're Just
I'm on 35 Hillside Drive, chairman of the planning board and on the zoning bylaw working group as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Cassie. I'm sorry.
So just from experience, I just wanted to have kind of the candid conversation and be fully transparent, because I think that our groups have learned a little bit through experience, just kind of given the amount of time and dedication to providing work product and bringing presentations to the various boards. I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone within my groups, but I do feel like some of that work product fell on deaf ears. And I think that, Diane, you made a good point where there are priorities that have been set and the boards have been tasks, but I do fully agree and think that we need a lot of support and a voice. And so even, for instance, I think someone like Justin should be on this call for the entire meeting as far as being able to push out communication and our voice, because I do think that we're just going to start having more and more turnover, not just on the official boards, but on these volunteer boards like the working group. And so I want to echo what you guys are saying, that I think prioritizing is really important, but I also think that fully advocating for the work product that we do and being very specific on what the expectations are. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention, I remember Katie did a great job at doing this, and Paul and Tom, I think you guys might recall, we had some working group sessions with the planning board where we kind of presented our work product and presentation, and we kind of went back and forth in order to just organize our own thoughts and just consider what was important and what we were doing, just so that it kept us on task. Because like Jean said, there's so many priorities and we're trying to organize it. So I just maybe making that recommendation, I'm not trying to set up more meetings or more time, but I do think that those working meetings with the various boards and the volunteer groups were really prudent and really helpful. And so I just wanted to make that recommendation.
Thank you very much. Cassie, the work of all this has been greatly appreciated. And I know we had some issues with the zoning bylaw that got kind of put off at town meeting, which was difficult. And the work of all the volunteers is very important. I think what we want to do now is, we've seen this work, we want to hear what the presentations are, and it's now really coming time when the town has to make some decisions, and they may or may not be pleasant, but this is the final process of moving forward to either get to yay or nay, or yay, half nay, half yay, whatever it is, at the wisdom of the select board.
And Jack, I'll just snowball off that. When it is a yay, how does our board work with Justin to put out that on all the communication channels so that we get the right voices of support when it's necessary?
Well, we're actually still developing the communication.
No, I understand that, but just, I think that could be a part of the discussion too, is when we do get those yays, what are we doing with that with Justin?
We don't know the answer to that now. The select board is still working that out. But one of the things that's very clear is the actual specific information will be on this town website. So it's easily found. So you won't be dealing with people who are arguing facts that aren't facts. But we will discuss. Boy. Well, I guess that's how we deal with it.
Who's that, Grady?
The cuckoo clock, very appropriate.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, my.
I take the hit for that.
Yeah. So anyway, Gene.
I think we should probably move on, because this is not a one-night discussion. This is a multi-meeting discussion. But I think, Cassie, to your point, it's important that the entire select board is behind a specific project or priority, because it's not just us. Then it becomes all of the constituents that we sell it to, and we ask the town to sell it to, and we have a communications plan surrounding it. And so that's why I do think having the support of the board for these probably very expensive projects that we're going to have to ask taxpayers to pay additional taxes for is going to be important for us to have a strong consensus in not just among us, but among the community. And so that is definitely a factor with a lot of these projects, whether it's zoning or infrastructure. And so on that point, I being mindful of the agenda, I think we should move on. But with Elm Street, I would suggest to close the loop here. Let's wait for the recommendation by the group. Diane will take back this information. We'll discuss it next, including in the context of, you know, a further session as it relates to roads and sidewalks, and they will be, you know, one component of this bigger question that we have to sort of work through, including payment and how that is going to work as well.
False choice.
Okay. The comments from the select board on this, do we want to briefly discuss, or do we have about the field study in town hall? Well, let me put it this way. Field study is pretty clear of starting fairly modestly, but moving forward. It takes Milliken Field off the agenda, I think, which is probably removing a lot of the opposition. What opposition there was seems to center around Milliken. Do we have issues on that? And on town hall, we've looked at that. Do we have issues on town hall? Is there some consensus, or do we want to wait till later on those two issues? Let's just discuss those two issues and see if we have a methodology to move forward on those, Jean.
So just an update for the board on the field study. You should have had the link in the agenda to all the field study information, which is publicly available. Michelle put it up on the website. The field study report's been out for weeks now. We had a working group meeting, which I invited everyone to. And at that meeting, Activitas presented on all the different options. Then we heard from stakeholders, and you may have as well, in terms of where to sort of narrow in on the variety of options in a way that might be palatable to the town. And I can tell you some of the initial feedback that I've received is focus on the tennis courts at Milliken and tennis and pickleball, as well as looking at Deer Hill and trying to do the upgrades at Deer Hill, and looking more closely at Deer Hill to see if there's another field that we can squeeze in there with that land around there to really, because we're still down like 15 fields or something crazy like that. So if we're going to start working, you know, fields in one area, again, how can we get our biggest bang for our buck? And Michelle Leary, who works for the town, is now reaching out to see if we can work with Activitas to get some finer detail on whether an additional field at Deer Hill is possible on the side closest to Osgood. And so that's not ready yet, still working that through, but that's the update that I have today. And my hope is to have more information from stakeholders and invite them on, particularly once we get more clarity on the Deer Hill field, which is a question mark. But that's the update from.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, unless we have other comments on that, I think that covers that for the purposes of this meeting only, unless somebody else on the board has a comment. Okay, town hall, anybody, what's our sense on town hall? Are we pretty much, it's passed a lot of town meeting votes. Are we pretty much comfortable with where the town hall committee is going? Does anybody have any great opposition to town hall? Corey, your opposition?
No, I'm.
Oh, okay.
No, what I was going to say is I don't want to talk about town hall without having town hall here. And Jean, I'm very happy that, you know, we've all.
It's on the agenda.
Okay, then I think if you're going to have a discussion about town hall, I think it would be appropriate to have the town hall building committee here. So that's just, I think, good working order. Field study, I'm glad there's for momentum, but I mean, again, I think let's have a meeting and let's invite the town hall building committee to get their updated numbers, and then we have that really hard discussion there's no material I have today to make a decision on town hall.
We're not asking, Corey, I need to clarify, we're not asking for a decision, and nor can every time we discuss any issue in town, can we bring in every committee that worked on it. We're just talking about infrastructure amongst the select board, and the whole town knows we're discussing it. It's on the public, agenda. We're trying to allow us as a board to discuss these things without bringing in every board every time we bring it up. So, but anyway, Jean, you raised your hand.
With town hall, the only update that we have to date is that they're still waiting to get a quote from the CRM, their construction risk manager. And so we're sort of in a waiting game right now. And, one concern I have is we might not have that quote until August, which is going to be tricky from a deadline standpoint. I've heard, but it's preliminary, that the cost may be around 18.8 at this point, given the cost of rising materials. But again, still waiting for the construction risk manager to come back with the finalized quote. So there's not much to update. It's just sort of in a waiting game. So this is sort of the discussion about town hall that, that's where we are. But Diane, maybe you know more.
No, I don't. And in fact, I was going to ask the question about where we stood with the construction risk manager. But I do think that, I think the reason these items have been are listed together on the agenda, and I think we've gone kind of maybe too far afield, trying to have too substantive a conversation, but these are the big items that we discussed at our goals workshop as potentially being something that we would build a debt exclusion vote for. So I think that that's probably to really have that substantive conversation about what that financing might look like. We need some numbers. And I think, as we talked about earlier with respect to the website, I think we should do everything, and perhaps Chris can talk to the town hall building committee to try to expedite the quote. I mean, there's no reason why that can't get expedited, because we need that information in order to really have substantive discussions, because none of this really matters. We could do everything. I want to do everything we can to make this town better and to serve the needs of the citizens, but we can't do it unless we know how much it's going to cost and how we're going to pay for it.
That's correct. Paul.
So these numbers that keep going up, are we going to be able to float these to the town to see what their opinion is? That should be an ongoing thing. Jean's mentioning the report coming in at, you said July, Jean, or August? So are we going to be able to float these to the town for their?
I mean, my concern is that we're not going to have a lot of time. And I do think that's a consideration we're going to need to address. And Chris, I know Chris is on the call, and, because we were trying to get as much information as we could, appreciating there's a lot of huge issues we're grappling with. And so before we take a vote or invite a committee in, we needed to have some preliminary information for the select board to just begin thinking through and understanding what was even out there from a background standpoint. Because a lot of this stuff isn't ripe yet, right? And town hall is one example of that, where there's no update as insofar as we know. But Chris, maybe you have any new information. Last I talked to Michelle, I understood that we were concerned that we just weren't able to get that number until really August.
So Jean, what I was saying, is laying the groundwork to the residents. So they're given some time to offer input.
Yeah, no, I know.
By the way, I want to,
that's important, Jack, is laying that groundwork and getting those numbers out, preliminary or otherwise. And if we come in better, we come in better. But, I think that's very important that we get that input.
I agree with that. By the way, one of the purposes when we put this agenda together is, with the open meeting law, it's very difficult for us to discuss as a board with our different thoughts on this. So we put it on the agenda and we put it out that way, differing opinions of select board members, we can talk amongst ourselves without worrying about, well, if I talk to this member, can I talk to another member? So that's why this is on there. And to your point earlier, Corey, we're not going to bring the boards in on every time, but sometimes I want to facilitate us being able to have a frank exchange of our opinions. And yes, we don't have all the information yet, but it's nice to know what other board members are thinking about. And it's also very good for the public to understand that we are deliberating, we are discussing this, and these are the issues that we're concerned about. So, and yes, no decision is going to be made, but it's important that we facilitate our ability to talk amongst ourselves, because we're all, you know, civic leaders, and we can talk amongst ourselves on that. And speaking of that, Corey's hand is up, so go for it, Corey.
Your point is well taken, Jack, and we need to discuss these things as a board amongst ourselves. However, what's been happening in this meeting is a lot of hearsay, a lot of changing of facts. If we are going to make a real decision, we need to begin with facts that are presented to us by the appropriate sources. If Town Hall Building Committee has a new number, they need to vote it, they need to give a presentation and give it to us. We can't say, well, if it's 15, it's okay. If it's 19, that's not how this works. It's not proper order. We need to have, if we want to talk about Town Hall Building Committee, we need to have them here and tell us what their latest information is. We can't, it does this community a great disservice if we just, if we just throw out whatever numbers we think and then try to make a conclusion on that. That's just not appropriate. So, you know, I go back to if we want to look at Elm Street, we'll look at Town Hall. If we want to do those things, we need to bring them in and say, hey guys, what is your thing? I mean, I watch Town Hall Building Committees. I know a lot of the members. I keep up to date because I'm interested, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you what they're saying. I'm going to let them speak for themselves because that's their role. That's the appropriate role of them. So I just go back to my earlier point. If we want to keep talking about these things, we should begin with them presenting to us, and then we can talk about it. That's the proper order.
Well, with all due respect, I think it's important for us to be able to talk amongst ourselves. And if we follow that model, this meeting, we would have had to have how many citizens come in here and participate. We're having discussions amongst ourselves to get a feeling for what we think about. And I'm not going to haul in all these committees every time we have a discussion. And I'm also not going to set the stage where it's very difficult for us to reach a consensus without violating the open meeting law. So, but anyway, you know, we can certainly, you know, disagree with that. But, you know, moving on, are there further thoughts on this? We're kind of getting a little late. I want to get to the parking, so our Chief Quigley can go home, and we have a couple of resolutions that we want to vote on. But anyway, Jean, go ahead.
No, I think we should move on. And just so everyone, including the public, understands the punchline here. With the select board goals, these are always going to be on our agenda to make sure we're either making progress or not making progress. And that's just the way it's going to be. And there are times when the committees will or won't be on the agenda. And the point now is that there's no progress to really report from Town Hall on Town Hall because they don't have the bid yet. The town staff has provided me the information. I'm providing it to you all. They're on here right now and can correct it if need be, if anything I said is incorrect. But the point is that we're waiting, but we're going to continue to update the public every time we have a meeting so they know whether we're making progress or not. And I think that that is really important for strategic planning purposes to make sure that, you know, we're continuing to keep ourselves accountable and understanding real deadlines too, because we have a very tight deadline coming up with the debt exclusion in early August. And if we can't make that, that's something that if I were a select board member, I would want to know right now if that's an issue that we need to be talking about and thinking about. If we don't have real numbers for Town Hall, then that's going to have to be a consideration about whether we want to move forward with an August debt exclusion, in my mind, if we don't have the numbers. And so this is just a flag for everyone to know.
Yeah, I think we need people want to know we're talking about these things. We may not have an answer. We can't have everybody here every time. but it is good for us to be able to have a frank exchange of opinions, and the way we do that is a public meeting, and we'll have things on the agenda that maybe we're not going to go in depth, but we have to have on the agenda. We cannot discuss it, and if it's going to something for a vote, there'll be something that clearly indicates there will be a vote on something. Go ahead, Paul.
I just want to say, that I didn't hear any hearsay or gossip during this discussion. I think it's a valuable discussion, so people tuning in can hear what the select board is debating amongst themselves. I don't agree that we have to have a board up in front of everybody. As a matter of fact, how many times has the town hall board been up in front of the select board? I'm going to say, innumerable. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there is a point in time where a board discuss amongst themselves and with the public as a whole who choose to join, what their opinions, where they're going. And that might formulate some discussion amongst other people as to where, again, their priorities and where the importance of that does. But I do agree that the board should be able to discuss amongst themselves in an open forum where people are getting a little afraid of, say, financing, escalating costs, how we're going to pay for it. Is it that important? And I'm not just speaking of town hall, I'm speaking of any priorities. So I would agree with you, Jack, and I would agree with Eugene on that. That's important that the board has discussions.
Well, I unless somebody has a burning desire in this particular thing, we have a couple of things we can move forward on. Do we want to discuss setting up a long-term capital financing committee, which would be kind of a blue ribbon as discussed earlier, just to talk about how you start rolling over debt exclusions and the long-term capital investment? Do we want to just authorize some discussions among people who are knowledgeable on that without giving them any particular authority? So they know we'd like to have them discuss. Does that make sense to people, or do we want to move on, or what do we want to do on that issue? Diane.
I mean, I think this is something we've been talking about for, and we've actually made, in my years on the board, there's been a number of quote unquote, budget planning groups, capital budget, but personally, and based on the previous conversation, probably you're gonna throw things at me. But I mean, I really think we need to invite our financial advisors in, which is the advisory board and capital budget. I mean, I think that they're the ones that have been in the trenches, and we also are without a finance director. So, which ultimately, the finance director working with Chris as the CFO, are key to this. But I would really like to get the input from, Brian Host, Rob Hillman, the committee members that have been in the trenches on this.
Just so you know, I've discussed that with them, and I won't disagree, and I'm not going to throw anything at you, Diane. Not tonight, anyway. Anyway, Gene, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the point of this agenda item is to figure out, is this something that we want to begin discussing, including with advisory and capital and the schools, who I think are a critical partner. You have information in your packet in terms of a model that Hingham did, including the financial modeling, the report. You can see there's a variety of stakeholders that Hingham had for a very similar committee. Is this something that the board is interested in doing? Because I do think that this is going to cut across just capital issues, for example. You're going to need to take a holistic view of, like Hingham did, maybe hopefully less so on the budget side and more so on the capital side. But as we talk about this August project and then lined up against the backdrop of other big projects out there, again, how are we taking this all into effect, or calculating this out over 1, 3, 5 years? What's our capacity, Diane, to your point, in terms of what the town can bear, including with the AAA rating and wanting to maintain that? That's going to be really critical. But in my view, I do think that we have some pretty talented professionals sort of in different areas that it would be great to have on this committee representing different constituencies. That's one option. Another option is, the select board can try to hire a consultant to do that. I'm not sure about that. So I think a part of this discussion is like, what's the process and tool for making progress here, I think is really the question. And is it a blue ribbon committee?
Diane?
Yeah, and yep, thank you. And yes, Jean, those are the questions. And I think that, you know, those are things, as we heard from Cassie earlier, I mean, what we don't want to do is pull together, you know, in the past when we've done this, we've done like somebody, a representative from the school committee, a representative from the select board, representative from capital, representative advisory, kind of run by the finance director. And I don't want to pull that group together without a deliverable, without a deadline, and also knowing that they have other commitments, and then get to the point where, you know, next May, we're like, yeah, sorry, we have different priorities. So like, we have to be very strategic about it. I know no one's going to, you know, there's probably a lot of people might not agree with that, but I do think we need to consider whether this is something that can be worked on with the input of some of these key people that I mentioned, but outsourced, depending on what already exists. And our capital plan does exist. I think the challenge is the financing. It's like, we know what we have to spend, and we know the bigger projects that are outside the operating budget. And then how does that look 5-10 years in terms of financing? And, you know, honestly, it's I think bigger than a lot of the talented people in town, but I think the talented people need to be at the table for that discussion.
And I would say, Diane, that we don't want to set up a committee with a formal charge to report back with a report on this. And we don't want to say it has to come from this group and that group. However, saying an almost informal discussion group kind of sponsored by the select board to have discussions about that, just to show that we're a forum if people are interested. But I don't think I don't think we want a formal charge. We don't want to pull from other people. Your points were well taken.
Yeah, I just think we got to be careful too, because the minute we like put parameters around who's at the table, then it becomes an official committee, and it's going to be subject to open meeting law. And ultimately, it really needs to be driven by the finance director and Chris or Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think the option is either we hire the resources and we directly delegate, have, you know, Chris go forth and do it, or we try to do a committee structure that has, a report that lays out a pathway and various options. And, you know, it's a report in 6 months to a year. It shouldn't be like a multi-year thing, because a part of this is going to be a report that other committees like capital budget, like the schools, are going to have to look at as we consider like very expensive school big picture issues among other large big picture issues, and, you know, have at least a common understanding of facts, I think is really important to have. And so again, I guess the question is, where does the board sit on how we want to implement the goal? Do we want to do it directly through town staff and consultants? Do we want
why don't we ask the treasurer? Why don't we ask the treasurer to, and normally if we had a finance director, we just say, how could we do this? And maybe Don, as he moves off, could give us just some kind of frame. Does that make sense? Does that kind of move us along?
By law, our chief financial officer is our town manager. And I think maybe that's where we start with Chris.
I'll talk to him.
Making a recommendation and you know, coming back to us. And again, there's probably a lot of data and charts that we're not privy to, or that I mean, it's public, but we don't know that exists. You know, the capital plan, while I've seen it, you know, there's probably a lot more to it, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we just need somebody to collate it and then build from there. And that might be a consultant, but I would charge Chris with making a recommendation to us.
I'd be glad to talk to Chris about that. Does that make sense to people? We kind of kick this can down the road, talk to Chris. He's a financial officer. I think we really kind of need a little bit of guidance on this. If we end up having to do a consultant or whatever, but at least get his input. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody have any great issue with that? I'm trying to move the meeting along so we can, you know, get
Jack,
Diane.
I just wanted to point out that Brian Host has his hand up, so I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, Brian, I'm sorry. No, that's even better, Brian. We already know where you live.
Thank you, Jack. So Brian Host, 29 Heather Drive, Chairman of the Capital Budget Committee. I guess to cut straight to the point, I think it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to undertake this project without a finance director in place. And the reason for that, quite simply, is that you need to be able to build a forward-looking model for the entire town's financial statements that integrates new capital purchases and any debt associated with those purchases. You know, people talk about roll-off, but people never put up on the board a projection of future debt that we're going to incur. Okay, roll-off is a myth because it's replaced by new capital projects and new debt. And this is, you know, an interactive forward-looking model that really can only be done by, you know, someone who is able to manipulate all of the town's numbers, not just a capital spreadsheet or a debt spreadsheet. Just to put this, you know, in a little bit of historical perspective, you know, for the benefits of both new and older members on the select board, you know, this has been a priority of you know, both of my predecessors on the capital budget committee, dating back to the date that I joined it roughly 10 years ago. And we've made a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So the first step was to force the departments, the individual departments, to come up with forward-looking capital request plans. And most of our departments today have fairly good forward-looking capital plans, you know, out for the next 10 years. They're solid for the next few. They get a little bit, you know, more speculative as we get into the middle. And as you get 10 years out, you know, obviously those numbers will change and evolve over time, but it's our most educated forecast, I guess, would be the best way to put it. Recognizing that those out year numbers will change. You know, the next step, you know, was to undertake this forward-looking model at the town level. All of the numbers, including the new capital projects and the new debt. And
could I interject very briefly,
sure.
Brian?
Sure.
One of the thoughts behind doing this is exactly your earlier point, which is as debt rolls off, we don't assume anything other than it will fund the next generation of capital projects.
Right.
So anyway, I just wanted to...
The projects really never go away. The idea that we fund the debt rolls off and we're done is silly. There's another project behind it.
Right.
And so conceptually, people need to just wrap their heads around that. You know, recognizing that, you know, getting back to the importance of the finance director, you know, we actually interviewed Don Pyatt specifically along the lines of his ability to build this model that I've just described. And Don did undertake and build that model. And, you know, there was some belief that was held that we could just, you know, given interest rates were low, we could just debt fund all of the capital requests from all the departments. Well, when the model was built, what it showed is what some of us expected it to show, which is that if you simply debt funded all the requests that we were facing in this 10-year plan, you promptly drained the capital stabilization fund down to zero. And within a 5-year period, 100% of the appropriation that was coming into the capital budget each year was actually going right back out the door in debt service, which means literally we couldn't buy a police car, couldn't buy a pencil, okay, if we proceeded down that path. So it's sort of the second thing I want people to understand. It's not just about interest rates. You can't just debt fund every request that the town has. Sooner or later, we need to pay for this out of, you know, the actual cash flows of the town. So those are the two highlights. It's a very complicated exercise. A lot of the work has been done. We do have capacity to do multi-million-dollar projects within the context of the levy and within the context of the capital stabilization fund. Bigger projects are almost absolutely going to need to be excluded, or we're going to need to put in place, new mechanisms for funding within the levy. And I guess the last thing I'd leave you with is that the current appropriation coming into capital each year of roughly $2 million a year is a number that was set over a decade ago. And it has not grown. Okay, so the amount that comes into either into the capital stabilization fund or into capital debt, okay, those two numbers together has been fixed for over a decade. Every other number in the budget has gone up, and that's part of the reason why there's so much pressure in terms of funding the existing capital request, which is a conversation for another day, but I just want you to have the perspective of why that pressure exists.
Well, thank you, Brian. And for the benefit of the board, this is the type of thought process that I think we need to facilitate. But for now, I think we'll just leave it in capital budget with Brian and Chris, and I'll speak to them tomorrow about doing something. But I think we really need to move this along unless somebody has a final comment that they need to speak to this matter.
We should, I would just say we should get started on this immediately in terms of huddling.
Yes, that's what tomorrow means. It's an obscure financial term. So anyway, hey, Brian, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So Master Plan Implementation Committee and Working Group, Zoning, Elm Street, Charge Composition and Appointments, Discussion and Vote. Do we want to just simplify that? Do we want to just have the members on that? They're all up for reappointment anyway. Do we just want to have them come? We don't want to say like planning has to send one or open space has to send one. That's proving problematic. Or do we want to discuss it now tonight, or or another night? Do we want to have 3 committees? Are there thoughts on that from the board? Well, I guess that's an answer. Jean, did you have your hand up? Yeah. And and Corey also.
My thought is we leave this for another night. It's getting pretty late right now. I think we've already tried to tackle a lot. I think zoning bylaw reform is our priority. So I think anything we do has to be through that lens of concentrating our limited town staff resources and our volunteers on that. And that's just my driving perspective of what's the best way to do that.
Just focus our thing and have a separate zoning bylaw group and just charge them to do whatever. Is that what you're saying, Jean?
Oh, I think I'm a little bit agnostic, but I think with the Master Plan Implementation Committee there, that the focus of that group or a separate zoning group, really, we have to figure out a way to sort of narrow our town's resources on the select board goals of zoning bylaw reform, because it is such a heavy lift, including for our town staff. I would just offer that to my fellow select board members to consider, as we have, master planning off doing something, drawing from town resources. We've got zoning needing help. For me, zoning law reform is the priority.
Paul?
I would agree with that. It's, start looking to maybe combining some committees or things that we can do and narrowing down our focus. Zoning is going to be key, still is, and I think that we should spend a lot of time working on that.
Other comments from the board? Corey?
Yeah, I guess broken record at this point, but I just recommend that I think bringing the working groups together and tightening up MPSC, we've talked about that. That seems to be what everyone's on the page. I would just ask Master Plan to come with us with what they think we should do, and we can just give them the okay.
Other comments? Tom, did you pull your hand down? Are you still there? Or?
I'm still here. I just wanted you to bring perhaps the whole board up to date on where the working group, zoning working group, is doing. There were 3 surviving members. The planning board appointed a second of its 2 representatives, so there's 4 members. I have taken the initiative to schedule a meeting for July 6th to get it back on track. We haven't met since April. I had a meeting with town council and two members of town council's firm who are going to assist us. We're all on the same page. It's just a question right now of filling the 3 vacancies, and one is dedicated to the zoning board, one is dedicated to the open space committee. I'm waiting for their decisions that I'm anticipating this week, but you know, we have 4, so we can go forward, but you know, whether it's a zoning board member, open space member, or new citizen members is not important. It's just that we have a working committee. I don't think it should be decided by 4 people and town council. I think there should be a 7-member board. But you know, we have an agenda to go forward with public forums coming up in the summer, with an aggressive town meeting schedule for the fall and the spring. It's just filling the committee seats. It's not something that needs to be reinvented. I won't speak to the master plan implementation committee that I'm not on, but it has 1 vacancy at this point. That's all. That just needs to be filled. What it does going forward will be up to it and you, but the zoning bylaw working group is ready to get jump started and everything's in place, but for filling out the 3 vacant seats at the moment.
Yeah, point of information for the board. I've been aware of, I've been the liaison to this committee. It's very hardworking. It's a lot of work. They're getting very close to being able to do that. We do have the ability, if we so choose, because this is a creation of the select board. We can simply say we are creating a zoning bylaw committee, and we can say, and it shall be comprised of 7 members selected by the select board, and we can do that very, very simply. We don't have to go through the master plan. We can just set up a brand new committee and charge it to do the zoning bylaws. I have an email out to zoning. Okay. Zoning. They're not getting back. I know Tom's tried to reach out to them. Open space doesn't have anybody interested. And again, here we have an unwieldy process. Well, we have the ability, if we so choose, to just take Tom's committee and say, it's a new committee, this is what it is, and it's charged with reciting zoning, and we're done with it. And Tom can continue with his work. And I know I've been facilitating meeting with town council, and then they also have Judge Cutler, who's a noted zoning expert. So we have all the pieces in place. The question is, you know, and I worked very hard to try to figure out a simple way to move this forward without it getting mired in a lot of other stuff, and that we have the ability to do that if we choose. Anyway, comments?
Tom, you're mute.
I said, it looks like Tom's making a few, but he's muted.
Oh, okay. Well, Tom,
sorry, I just
board members go first. But
I only said don't make it more complicated than it is. There's just there's 3 vacancies that need to be filled, period. Otherwise, they're ready to move forward and have a schedule to do so.
But we can't get it from zoning. We can't get it from open space, and that's what under that. Whereas we can just reconstitute it, and we can take that requirement out.
Then please do that before the scheduled July 6th meeting.
All right.
I agree with Tom. I think the group has already made so much progress and has so much work product to organize and kind of and reorganize based on the priorities of the select board. So I think it'd be helpful for us to meet on that July 6th and then come back in front of you guys to just reorganize and prioritize ourselves.
Well, we would just reconstitute you exactly as you are. That's all.
With less seats.
It just means with the number of seats, and then we could appoint anybody to those other seats. So, but anyway, you know, to see there's thoughts on the select board.
Yeah, Diane, I'm going to just jump
in.
Yeah,
I
don't think we have a meeting before July 6th, if I'm correct, but, you know, I think it's very simply just changing the ZBA rep and the open space rec and whatever else we're missing into citizen at large. And that might actually help us, A, get more people from the citizenry engaged, and B, help us push this over the finish line at town meeting.
Absolutely. That's the whole point of this. That's why it's on the agenda.
So the question is, you know, are we prepared to make that change just to the composition tonight?
We can do that. If the board so chooses, it is possible to do that. It's on there. If we choose to do it, we can do whatever we want. And it seems like the board says, we just want to change those 3 to citizens at large. If you want to do that, we have the power to do that.
And what are the 3 positions, I'm sorry, that are unfilled?
There was Katie Dugan's position, which was the second master plan
implementation.
But, you know, both she and Cassie were citizen members of the master plan committee. So I always looked at them as both citizen at large and master plan representatives. There is a zoning board representative, and I have spoken to Woody about that. I don't know when they're meeting next. They're usually once a month and near the end of the month, so it might be this week. And open space I have talked to, and they're meeting this week. My own personal view is that the zoning board probably should have a representative, so I would give them the opportunity to make that decision. With all due respect to open space that I once served on, I don't think it matters either way. I don't think we need a second member from the Master Plan Implementation Committee. We do need as many citizens at large that we can fill. Again, the point is well taken that given the kind of reaction we've faced at a simple definitional change at December's town meeting, we need to have citizens on this committee to help with the buy-in for this. But whoever it is has to jump right in, because I've plotted out, you know, with the idea of doing this in phases, and then the next 2 town meetings, even though it's June, we have to do a lot of preparation for a December town meeting. And so whoever it is just has to be able to, my only request is they jump in, they read the stuff that's being presented, they study it, and they participate. And that's what we need most of all.
So why don't we do this, Tom, if we say 2 citizens in large and 1 zoning, I agree with the zoning. And charge zoning with putting a person on there, and the other 2 citizens at large, who would be basically Cassie and one other.
No, Cassie's already on. So there's 3 vacancies. It would be a zoning representative and 2 other new citizens at large.
Will that work?
And that will give us a 7-member board, an odd number, you know, for votes we take, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that will work. You know, and I think that would be very helpful, but I'm just saying that the aggressive schedule is that they have to jump right in. You know, the meeting on the 6th is just to reorient and refocus the committee that remains, and having town council now on board. July.
Jack, can we have, sorry to interrupt, but can we have that meeting on July 6th without?
Oh yeah, no, but what we're trying to do right now, that this does not unconstitute your committee, it keeps it going.
Yeah, no.
That's the whole point, and it gives you the habit of giving a little nudge to zoning to get Woody back on the board, but don't tell him that. But so this now you know, it's a priority for what you guys are doing to get it done. And this just puts the full weight of the select board behind its express goal and makes it simpler for you to get to a quorum. And it preserves all the work you've already done.
And with respect to meetings and the time to do these appointments, the meeting on July 6th of the zoning working group, we have 4 members. We can go forward with 4 members. It is really just organizational and scheduling, but come, let's say, July 20th, the next meeting that I anticipate, we'd be getting into the meat of things. So I'd like to have the full board in place at least by July 20th.
Well, what is the sense of the select board? Are we comfortable with authorizing this? Corey?
As usual, I'm going to say they have a July 6th meeting. Why don't they vote on a reconstitution? We can change it and just approve it then. But I mean, it sounds like we're doing a little bit back of the napkin math here. Let's just let them meet. They have 4 members. They can then send us a recommendation for the new setup. They can do the deliberation, and we can just approve it. And then, you know, it'll also give Open Space and Rec one more chance to fill the seat. It'll give Zoning Board of Appeals one more chance to fill a seat. And then we can, you know, move along, you know, after they give us a recommendation based on what they think will work to give them a good committee.
I should hear from both boards definitively.
Wait a minute, Paul.
I'm just listening to all this. Have we given any thought to combining some of these committees? I mean, we have a lack of people who want to participate. Have we taken a look at some of these committees, boards, the whole 9 yards, and seeing what some may work out just as well if we combine them together and kind of streamline the operation?
Well, that's not what we're
speaking figuratively, not literally. I'm just saying, has anybody gone through like open space and recreation? Kind of goes hand in hand to a degree, but I don't know exactly what the charges are. But
that's a bylaw committee, so we can't do away with that committee. So I mean,
I'm speaking figuratively, not literally. Yeah. I'm just saying, have we ever looked at any of the boards to see what we can combine and streamline?
Yes, we do try to do that once a year at least, but these working groups, and I think that's where we're going to get to once we push some of these projects over the finish line, is being able to consolidate them. And the way this was set up with reps from other committees makes it difficult. So I think what we're talking about is adding more citizen participation and fewer people from other committees. I think that makes sense.
This discussion is only about the zoning bylaw, right? We're not discussing the other things. And as Diane said, some of them we can't do. Jean?
Yeah, I think let's get the suggestions from the zoning bylaw working group from their meeting from July 6th. I think we're all on the same page. We want to convert a lot of these spots into citizens at large. They can come back and make a proposal to us. And I think they should also look through the working group charge, Tom, to see if there's other specific items you want to propose that we consider, including with respect to master plan implementation committee. I would be open to you just having a direct line up to the select board and making, you know, recommendations directly to us instead of going through another filter. I think that was part of the concern about the select board not being engaged enough, including on the communications front and knowing what was going on. So we definitely want to support you on that front and, you know, try to, I don't want to say remove hurdles, but, you know, to the extent that that helps streamline the process and make it more efficient, I think that would be something that you might want to consider as well, because I do think that, you know, we could work hand in hand with zoning, including to roll out communication plans once those proposed zoning bylaws go out. And I think the last thing is on the substance. And Tom, you and I have talked about this. I think it would be helpful to start narrowing in on where are, you know, the key areas that we want to focus on in terms of proposed bylaws when you feel like your group is ready to, you know, make those proposals. And I'm not sure the charge needs to be revised, but if you think it does, it would be helpful, again, as we're talking about revising the charge, to understand where, if anywhere, we might need to think about on that point.
Yes. Tom, you're muted.
Muted again. All right. The charge doesn't need to be changed. And because Katie was chair of both master plan and the working group, we didn't think there was formal reporting. The working group, I have tried for the last year at every planning board meeting when we do our liaison updates to report on it. That's, if there's any board that we have to report to because of planning's formal role in zoning changes by state law, it's planning. But you know, since I become chair of the planning board in the last few weeks and, you know, quarterback by default of the working group, I have been in open communication with a lot of you individually about what we're doing and what we're up to. And that won't change. I realize ultimately this is coming to fall town meeting. There'll be, I can tell you there will be a lot of articles, and it's going to require communication with lots of people, and it's going to, including the public. That's why I want to do a public forum as soon as possible. But right now, I just don't think it can, you know, yes, the committee can function with 4 people, but it shouldn't. It needs broader public participation. So I just would like to have a 7-member board as quickly as possible. That's all. That's all I ask for.
Tom, this is what we're trying to do, is easily and as efficiently and quickly as possible by replacing the designated ones with citizens at large. So understand that's what we're doing, and the charge is going to be the same. Only thing is you probably report directly to the select board as opposed to the master plan implementation, because you represent one of the 3 major goals of this select board.
Yeah, and again, I don't think that the working group, quote unquote, reports, but I'll report to whoever. I expect to report to my own planning board since I'm a rep on that committee, and then I will certainly report to you regularly. But we, you know, like I said, everything is, you know, with town council is in place. A schedule is ready to be proposed to the committee. It's an aggressive schedule, and we're ready to move forward.
Okay. So what's the sense? Do we want to just pass on this now? Or do we want to do,
I think we invite Tom's group back at the next meeting, including with their suggestions, and we be prepared to recharge the group as it relates to the appointments. I think Tom, to the extent you feel like you're ready with that schedule to share it with us, we might have some input there, including on the communications front, because that's going to, you know, obviously draw from town resources. You know, last we talked about doing the comprehensive zoning bylaw overhaul at the annual spring town meeting. So I think that would be a point of discussion too, depending on what schedule you all are contemplating.
Well, I've also gotten the signals from your board about doing this in at least two steps. We were thinking 3, and we didn't come forward with anything last spring, to our own detriment. But right now I'm working on a 2-step proposal. The fall would be largely reorganizational, and the spring would be heavier on substantive change.
Okay. Okay, is there any further comments on this from the board? Okay, moving forward, $200,000 in the Special Education Reserve Fund. Comments?
Is somebody here to present that, or is it just?
I'm okay making a motion for that because I think school committee voted on it. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, they voted 200,000.
And then our motion is just to approve that.
I'm not even sure we need to approve it. We just want to be aware of it. Chris, do we have to approve anything on this, or just
the policy requires the school committee to make a request, and they have to vote it, and the select board also has to vote it. So the board needs to vote to release $200,000 from the Special Education Reserve Fund.
Okay, Chair, entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved. All right. The motion on the, is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, there's a motion to approve $200,000 from the Special Education Fund. Roll call vote, starting with Jean.
Jean Haley Dippold, aye.
Corey.
Corey Evans, aye.
Paul. Paul Grady, I could read his lips, aye. Diane.
Diane Kennedy, aye. And just as a wrap up, it's just to clarify for the public that we're taking $200,000 from the Special Education Reserve Fund and moving it into the school department's budget.
Okay. All right, the motion's made and passes unanimously. Thank you. Chief Quigley, are you there? You are. Boy, you're a hero tonight.
A hero tonight, huh? Okay. Yeah. Well, this will be a quick one, so maybe I will be a hero. You all set? Should I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hey, good evening, everybody. I think you've, I have to assume you've all received the memo I sent to Chris and Tracy about requesting to amend the Cohasset parking regulations and storing of vehicles in municipal parking lots.
Yes.
Okay.
We got it.
So basically, on behalf of the police department, I respectfully request that the honorable board consider amending the Cohasset parking regulations by adding the following section to Article 5 of the bylaws. We want to add section 1A. No person shall park or store any vehicle in a town-owned or controlled municipal parking lot or area that is unregistered in violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 9, uninspected in violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 20, in excess of 40 feet in overall length, or a detached trailer, without permission from the chief of police, town manager, or their authorized designee. The fine for violation of Article 5, Section 1A is $50 per day. After 5 days, said vehicle may be towed and stored at the owner's expense. That's the language of the proposed bylaw or regulation. It's not a bylaw, it's a regulation. The reason for this is we're experiencing an issue in the town lot where people are storing vehicles. They are registered, but a lot of them, well, the two of them are not inspected. And we had a situation where people were storing boats on trailers in the lot. It's turned into a boat storage area. We really there's no mechanism to curb that activity. So I'm open to any questions if it's okay with the chair.
Paul, thank you, Chief.
All right, Chief. We can't go any higher on those?
No, so I did, with the chair's permission, I did coordinate with Chris. I did talk to town council. We went back and forth several emails. $50 is the statutory limitation. With there's a couple of exceptions, and but we accepted the provisions of Chapter 90, Section 20A and a half. She says north of 25 years ago. So when the town accepted the provisions of that section of the general laws, that limited us to $50 for certain violations such as this.
No, the reason I was asking, that seems kind of an easy pill to swallow. If you just, you got an excavating job, you need a couple days in a parking lot. That's the reason I'm asking.
Yeah,
or a boat or something like that. I mean, $50 a day, it's,
Well, the catch is after 5 days, we can tow it and store it. So if something's uninspected, the chances it's very easy to register a vehicle, but to have it inspected, it has to pass inspection. And that's the rub. So if something isn't inspected, they really can't, they're not supposed to move it, and they can't leave it there. So, it can get very expensive very quickly after 5 days.
Diane?
Yeah, just a thank you for clarifying that we're updating the parking regulations and not the bylaws, because bylaw would require a town meeting. And just on the, can you stack tickets?
Every day. So the way this is written, it would be daily.
Okay, great, thank you.
Corey?
I was just going to make a motion that we approve this, if that's okay with the chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay. Do you want to read that, Corey, or do you want me to read it? I have it on my screen.
I was going to say that I move that we adopt the amendments to the Cohasset parking regulations by adding to Article 5 the wording as presented today by Chief Quigley.
That's fine with me. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, start with Jean.
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Paul, Corey.
Corey Evans, aye.
Paul.
Already aye.
Diane.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye. Motion passes unanimously. Chief, thank you very much. We appreciate you staying here so late.
Okay, now thank you, Board. I'll coordinate with Chris and Tracy, have this filed with the town clerk tomorrow, and we'll be sending out registered letters to several people in the town lot.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
I think that's Grady's boat in there, so don't go. Don't be
40-foot schooner.
Yeah. Oh, you're kidding. All right. Okay. Electric bus RFP. Tanya, you are so good to be so late. Anyway, do you have a motion for us?
Yes, just a quick update. And if you have questions, Brianna Walsh from NLX is in the audience, and NLX has worked with us closely on this demonstration project. What we have discovered is we do have to take this out for a procurement through the standard procurement process. And Michelle Leary is ready to do that if the select board approves pursuit of a procurement for an electric school bus demonstration project. And so that is what we're here for. The school committee voted unanimously to approve a going forward motion, just to show support. And then of course, that's going to be subject to the pricing and the award that comes back from the procurement process.
Very good, thank you. So any discussion from the board? This is essentially what we've voted on and previously. It's just a formality. The chair would entertain a motion.
I'll move that the board approve the issuance of an RFP for the electric school bus demonstration project.
I'll second it.
Yeah, we've had a motion made and seconded to approve the RFP for an electric school bus. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, roll call. Jean.
Jean Haley Dippledy.
Corey.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul.
Paul Grady, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Tanya. Well done.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'm in good company being here so late, but not staying much later. So good night and good luck.
Okay. We have the annual proclamation for Pride Month. I have it up. I'll read it unless another board member wishes to read it, but otherwise, this is a proclamation, Town of Cohasset proclamation for Pride Month, June 2022. Whereas Cohasset is a community that values diversity and inclusion and is committed to equal rights and opportunities for all of its residents. And whereas Cohasset believes in the inherent dignity of everyone who lives or spends time in our community and is dedicated to fostering the acceptance of all community members. And whereas Cohasset recognizes the important contributions of its LGBTQ+ residents to the town's history, culture, economy, and civic life. And whereas we recognize the organizers and members of the Cohasset Pride Project for their efforts to increase LGBTQ+ visibility and its support of our LGBTQ+ citizens, particularly our LGBTQ+ youth, through the distribution of flags, buttons, and yard signs displayed across town. And whereas Pride Month has been celebrated every June since the 1969 Stonewall riots, a movement that sparked the LGBTQ plus people and allies to fight against discrimination and harassment and fight for love and equality and acceptance for all. And whereas June is now recognized across the country and in the Commonwealth as Pride Months, and whereas we affirm our support for our LGBTQ plus residents and community members and stand with them to protect their civil rights and ability to feel valued, safe, and supported by citizens and community leaders. Chair will then entertain a motion of adoption.
So moved.
Ah, damn it.
I note that all of the board members
happily
together. And do I hear all seconded?
Second.
Vote is made and seconded. Roll call vote. Jean?
Jean Haley Dipple, aye.
Corey?
Corey Evans, aye.
Paul?
Already aye.
Diane?
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Motion is adopted unanimously. Thank you. We have approval of minutes for 5/10, 5/24, 6/6, and 6/7, 2022. Are there any amendments to those minutes? If there are none, then the chair would entertain a single motion to approve all of them.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification, I'm going to need to recuse myself from one of the meetings I wasn't at, so we probably should vote them, even though we've made a motion. Vote them separately. I wasn't here on the 7th. Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to do is we are going to approve the minutes of 6/7/2022. Chair would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, although I think Corey has his hand up. FYI.
Corey,
is your hand up or you just didn't take it down earlier?
No, it is up. And
I'm sorry.
We have a motion in a second. I guess I can phrase my comments in the form of amendment. I'm just curious, since the chair has made a priority to have an electronic, recording. I was somewhat expecting to see such a policy in this. That way, when we voted the minutes, the chair could also vote with the board as for them to be approved. So I would amend the motion to say that we will not adopt these minutes until the question of electronic meeting minutes has been resolved.
Okay, that's fine. You can make that. You can make that motion. As you know, I think that we need to do this. I didn't put it on the agenda, but I'm more than willing, obviously, to. We could just table this.
We have we have a couple of live motions in second and
yeah, I know, but we can, withdraw the motion.
I'm uncomfortable doing that because our obligation is to produce the minutes in a written form as soon as possible to get it out to the public. So I think I think we have to address Corey's amendment first, if there's a second to that, and vote it. And if there isn't a second, then I think we need to go to the second motion that was made, which is on the 7th.
Well, I made the motion was on the 7th. Now, okay, well, whoever made the motion, the original motion, they can just withdraw it.
I'll withdraw my initial motion.
Okay. And before, did anybody make the motion for the 7th? I think Corey spoke up before that motion was made. So now we don't have any motions on the table. So Diane, what would you suggest would be the best? We can very simply, now that nothing's on the table, we can put it off. I don't think we have an obligation do it today. Or if you want, but we really can't discuss whether we want to change our policy.
Right.
Because it's not on.
So
we
go ahead, Corey.
Well, I mean, if I may, the recommendation would be to table these minutes for now, and if there's no motion, we don't have to officially table, I guess. And I think it's appropriate for the chair to say that he's going to put this on a future agenda.
Oh yeah, certainly.
So if that's the plan, I think that's great.
That's the plan. I think we should do this. I think, and thank you, Corey. I think that's wonderful. So then we get to move on to town manager's update, a renewal of the Verizon cable contract. Chris? Okay, I think we'll cut Chris some slack. His father with a broken.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Oh, okay.
So I gave an update to the board last time. I'm not planning on coming back to the board until later in the summer with a little bit more of an update. So I didn't really have anything planned. I did see this on the agenda yesterday, but
okay, that's fine.
So I will pass. It's late in the evening, and I will give you your time back.
All right, thank you. Select board comments. Does anybody have any comments? Oh, I would like that.
I do. Sorry.
Member Kennedy.
Diane.
I'm sorry. No, I just wanted to remind people that on tomorrow evening, the Cohasset Harbor Committee is having their third program on climate resilience related specifically to Cohasset Harbor. It's on Zoom, and the agenda is posted on the town website. So that's tomorrow night from 7 to 8:30.
Any other select board comments? Jane?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate the Art Festival for doing a good job, including our police who really stepped in to help out the Art Festival as it was evolving. And so I think, I appreciate Chief Quigley's work there. And my daughter entered an entry, which I was delighted to see. And so I want to congratulate her as well. And it was really lovely seeing all the local artists, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Corey.
Yep, my comment is just to remind everybody this weekend is the famous Cohasset Triathlon. So if you're not participating, then you just kind of have to deal with some traffic in that most of the harbor will be closed. Most of the coastline will be closed in Jerusalem Road and Atlantic Ave. And Sandy Beach will be closed for setup and for takedown. So good luck to all the participants in that. I remember one year, Chief Sylvia said we had one more person coming out than we had going in. That's weird, but that's fine. We just can't be short on the way out. So everyone swim safe, bike safe, run safe. It looks like the weather's going to be holding up, maybe a little hot, but it's going to be a good day. So have fun, everyone.
Now, Corey, are you not a participant?
I am signed up and I am, we'll see.
So we have a
game time decision.
Getting out of the water.
All right.
I've got the biking and the running. The swimming is just not my bag. So we'll.
Well, you can borrow my boat. Yeah, or one of the ones coming out of the town parking lot. Paul?
No, I have no comments.
Okay. Well, the only comment I have is I think it's time that we consider electronic, minutes, and I did have some discussions. We can get professionals who will go through the Zoom and take the highlights, which would be basically what was discussed and any votes, and put the written copy, which will probably be required to have, and then the backup would be the Zoom. And it's very possible to have that as the backup, as part of the official record. And thank you for Corey for bringing that up. And I guess Paul's reconsidered his select board comments.
You brought a point. Are those stored indefinitely?
Yes, but we don't have them. We would have to look into storage facilities. But that as a permanent record, they would be stored indefinitely. They could not be thrown away.
So we could retrieve them at any time we needed them.
Yes, that's the whole idea.
Good.
Retrievable, hopefully searchable. And that way, if there's a discussion, you can go back to the actual record. It will also make it possible to, we don't have to hire quite the level of professionals to transcribe the minutes.
So in other words, Jack, we don't get a missing Nixon 15 minutes of tape?
Only if you wish it.
Good.
So, all right. We have no topics reasonably anticipated in 48 hours. Chair will entertain a motion to, come on, Corey, come on. I'm slowing it down so you can
Motion
get to
adjourn.
Second.
Oh,
I'm in Cambridge.
Man, you know,
I got an hour drive.
Truly,
Let's get out of here.
Corey Evans, aye.
Aye, come on.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul. Diane.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Corey, you did it. Yeah. Jack Creighton, aye. Thank you very much. It would a hard working, meeting, but I think it's just really good to hear everybody letting their thoughts be heard. Well, I think we're doing well. I'm very proud of the sport, by the way. Thank you.
Good night.